Chapter 669. If it was only like this then it was alright, but it was because of Zhang Ziqing that he divorced Chen Roqiu and even formed a feud with the Qin family. Now if this was spread out, others would say that he mistook the fish's eyes for pearls. Shenwan's heart was already faintly regretting it. Zhang Ziqing's belly had his child, but he was afraid that his career would be ruined because of Zhang Ziqing. In terms of feelings and power, he still had to value power. Not to mention that the woman who was sleeping beside him was someone else's wife. Shenwan was unable to let it go. His eyes were deep in thought for a while, and just as he was about to give instructions, he saw one of his attendants rushing in and shouting, "Master, something has happened. Not good." Shenwan frowned and said angrily, "What is the propriety of being so flustered?" That attendant was trembling as he handed a letter to Shenwan. One did not know why, but his eyes were somewhat evasive. Shenwan looked suspiciously at the attendant. This attendant was the person who followed him and usually followed him to pass messages to his colleagues. After looking at 2 lines, Shenwan's face suddenly turned green, and if one looked carefully, one would be able to detect some fear. In the imperial study, Emperor Wenhui was in a rage. Emperor Wenhui sneered as he threw the memorial in his hands onto the ground. The eunuchs beside him did not dare to breathe loudly. When the emperor was angry, there would be millions of corpses. Especially at this moment, one dared not touch Emperor Wenhui's bad luck. The first item on the memorial was a list of things that Shenwan had done from a few years ago until now. It didn't seem to be a big deal. But Emperor Wenhui was after all a person who had walked out of the bloody storm that his brothers fought for power. The memorial was written very cleverly, but every line described the unusual relationship between Shenwan and Prince Ding, Fu Xiu-yi. Among the 9 sons of Emperor Wenhui, the one he was most assured about was the Crown Prince and Prince Ding. The Crown Prince was after all born of an orthodox lineage and his body was weak, thus Emperor Wenhui would subconsciously be more relaxed with him. Even though Prince Ding was outstanding, he did not care about the matters of the court, and in addition Consort Dong Shu had a temperament that did not fight or snatch. This made Emperor Wenhui feel extremely comfortable. Emperor Wenhui could see the open and secret fights between the various princes but would not say anything to stop it. As long as they didn't go overboard, he would be happy to see such a situation of mutual checks and balances. Once one touches power, one would not be willing to let it go. Seeing his sons grow up one by one and reaching the age of dragons and tigers, Emperor Wenhui would also be wary. What he hated the most was that the princes and the ministers were too close to each other. Although this was an unavoidable fact, for example, his 9 sons each had a group of supporters. But when this son became the Prince Ding who did not fight or snatch, Emperor Wenhui was somewhat unable to accept it. On the contrary, he was even angrier than before. In the past, Fu Xiu-yi showed that he did as he pleased and did not care about worldly affairs, but now in Emperor Wenhui's eyes, there was only one word: act. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Emperor Wenhui's face was gloomy. Each and every one of them think that Zhen is easy to fool. Since it is like this, Zhen will fulfill their wish. The matters of the imperial court had always changed in an instant. There were many who went to the emperor's hall in the morning and became a farmer in the evening. If they committed a crime and became Tian Shirang, then their luck was pretty good. Most of them ended up in prison, and a knife slit their throats, implicating their entire family. Shenwan was such a person. After the fight between the Xin and Qin family a few days ago, one thought that things had gradually calmed down. Who knew that a group of officials suddenly came to the Xin residence to arrest people? Some curious commoners inquired and heard that it was Shenwan who did not do his job well in court and implicated the entire Xin residence. The specific charges were not clear and the commoners were easy to coax as they believed that he did not do his job well. But there were smart people who could see that the matter was unusual. One knew that if the task was not done well, then why would the entire Shin residence be destroyed? This was clearly a serious crime that required the execution of the entire family. Chapter 670. The commoners who were passing by looked at the Shin residence that was no longer the same as before and started to point fingers. As they spoke, they started to talk about the formidable great general Shin Axian. They said that 2 years ago the Shin family wanted to separate from the family when Shin Axian was in dire straits, and afterward Shin Axian's name was removed from the Shin family. One did not think that Shin Axian was able to obtain a blessing in disguise and escaped a calamity. When these words reached Shin Miao's ears in the Shin mansion, Shin Miao only smiled without a care. Luo Tan clenched her fists and had an angry expression. This is called retribution, but the time has not yet arrived. In the beginning they humiliated eldest Bo and auntie, and if they knew that only you all are fine, one feared that they would be angry. Luo Ling pondered for a moment before shaking his head. What crime did third Shin master commit that there would be such fanfare? Shin Miao said, since His Majesty is so angry, one must have done something to behave atrociously on the Tai Sui's head. These matters have nothing to do with us. Luo Tan nodded her head, indeed. Then let us wait and watch the show. Shin Qiu looked at Shin Miao with a worried expression and hesitated to speak. After Luo Ling and Luo Tan left, Shin Qiu did not leave and pulled Shin Miao into the room. After seeing that the door was locked, he then asked Shin Miao, younger sister, was it you who did the Shin family's matters? Shin Miao did not know whether to laugh or cry. Eldest brother, why do you push everything onto my head? If His Majesty wants to punish those who did not do their job well, I do not have the ability to intervene in third Shu's matters. Shin Qiu pressed his forehead with some headache and said, younger sister, eldest brother knows that there are some things that you are not willing to say to outsiders. But the matters of the court are not as simple as you think. Sometimes it seems that you have one, but perhaps in the future there would be variables and one would be implicated. He rambled on for a while and Shin Miao was helpless. Eldest brother, to tell you the truth, this matter indeed has nothing to do with me. Shin Wan was imprisoned because Chen Roqiu stabbed him in the back. At that time Chen Roqiu and Shin Wan quarreled to the death. Do you think that Chen Roqiu would leave it at that? This time it was Shin Qiu's turn to be surprised. Chen Roqiu. After all, Chen Roqiu had lived with Shin Wan for so many years and knew Shin Miao's matters like the palm of her hand. If you really want to stab someone in the back, it's much easier than ordinary people. Shin Miao said. Shin Wan was harmed by the person next to him and implicated the entire residence. What does it have to do with me? When Shin Qiu heard it, he first thought about it carefully before looking suspiciously at Shin Miao. How do you know about these matters so clearly? I always look forward to them being unlucky, so naturally I sent people to monitor their every move. Shin Miao and Xie Jingxing had mingled together for a long time, so there was a sense of fearlessness in her words. Shin Qiu usually saw Shin Miao with a dignified and imposing manner, and this was the first time he saw her in such a manner. He did not know why, but he felt that it was somewhat familiar. Then, he shook his head and interrupted the wild thoughts in his mind. Even if it's surveillance, it's too much of a coincidence. He widened his eyes and looked a little comical. Sister, could it be that you're adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes? Shin Miao smiled. Eldest brother, feel that it is how it is. Anyhow, these matters are not related to me at all. Shin Qiu's face collapsed as he said, how can you have such guts? If this pierced the heavens, Shin Miao interrupted his nagging. How did eldest brother become so long-winded? It is only a small matter and the Shin family only have themselves to blame for falling to such a state. If Shin Wan did not do things badly, how would he be caught by others? If he was in harmony with Chen Roqiu, how would he be provoked successfully? One should first think about what one did wrong before saying that others are wrong. Shen Miao's words made Shen Qiu dumbfounded, and it was only until Shen Miao's maid sent him out of the courtyard that Shen Qiu reacted and slapped his head to regain his senses. Shen Miao was obviously using sophistry to pester endlessly, and one did not know where did she learn this from. It was clearly a bold move that even the emperor and the court officials were playing in the palm of her hands, but she made it sound so innocent. Shen Qiu was flabbergasted. When did Shen Miao learn to speak such self-righteous nonsense? And this posture was very familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere. Where was it? Chapter 671. In the room, Shen Miao sent Shen Qiu off and sat at the table with a sigh of relief. It was just the beginning, and Emperor Wen Hui had a swift and decisive temperament. Most likely he could not tolerate the princes and the courtiers getting too close, not to mention all these matters started a few years ago. From the very beginning, she must not forget who she wanted to deal with. Since her rebirth, many things had gradually faded away. For example, the people of the Shen family. Even if she did not do anything, she could still court her own death. But Fu Xiu-yi was different. Fu Xiu-yi was like the most vicious snake that was hidden in the dark. He looked harmless but would suddenly jump out and bite people. Just like the last time he asked Shen Wan to matchmake him and Prince Zhou. Even if Shen Miao tried to hide it in front of Fu Xiu-yi still stared at her. It was no longer appropriate for him to endure and continue planning. He might as well tear apart the cloth covering him and start an evenly matched game of chess right now. What Fu Xiu-yi was most afraid of was that his ambition would be exposed. Even though Shen Wan's matter would make Emperor Wen Hui suspicious, but with Fu Xiu-yi's means, he would not be defeated so easily. He would definitely come up with a rebuttal. But how could Shen Miao miss this opportunity? Even if one could not defeat him this time, one must make Fu Xiu-yi shed a layer of skin. Just one Shen Wan was not enough, this chess game had to be more exciting. Shen Miao let Jing Zhi call Mo Qing in from outside and whispered a few words to Mo Qing. From the luxurious mansion to the prison, it was only a matter of one night. Shen Wan felt that in these 2 years, the Shen residence was very unlucky. It was as if he had collided with something, and everything was going wrong. Originally, it was the second branch that was in trouble. After the second branch, it was the third branch's turn. Now all the people in the Shen residence were in jail, except for the first household. Now that the first household had been reactivated by Emperor Wen Hui, no matter what would happen in the future, at least at present they were more glorious than them. Speaking of which, the Shen residence continuously bumped into bad luck, just like after the separation of the first household, or more accurately, it started from Shen Xian's return to the capital 2 years ago. Could it be that someone had secretly placed a curse on the Shen residence? In the cell next door, the Shen family's womenfolk were locked up, and old Shen Furan and Chang Zaiqing were locked together. When Shen Wan heard old Shen Furan's complaints and moans, his heart started to feel irritated. Thinking back to 2 years ago, the number of people that came to visit the formidable great general Shen residence could be found everywhere, even though they were all here for Shen Xian's name. But Shen Xian was not in the capital all year round, and the Shen residence was not short of money, so who would not say that they were imposing when they went out? Although Shen Gui and himself were both civil officials, they were still climbing the ranks year after year. His 2 daughters were slender and elegant, and they could be of help if they found a good marriage partner. Shen Yuanbo and Shen Yuan were still healthy, and Ren Wanyun was astute, and Chen Roqiu was gentle, and it was a good scene of a harmonious family. However, in just a short 2 years, things had changed, and he had actually fallen to such a state. With a sickly voice, Shen Gui asked, "Sandy, what crime have you actually committed? His Majesty is actually going to arrest our entire residence?" "I did something wrong." Shen Wan sneered. Second older brother is also someone who had served in the court before. One did not know if His Majesty has the heart to arrest anyone, and just casually make up a reason to arrest them. This is the reason for His Majesty to pinch me. If it was really a bad job, one would definitely not arrest everyone in the residence. This clearly meant that one was going to send a punitive expedition against them. When Chang Sai-ching, who was next door, heard it, she exclaimed, and there was some anxiety in her words, "Is it His Majesty's intention? Why would His Majesty deliberately do this? Could it be that Master had angered His Majesty in some way?" Chapter 672. If it was normal times, Shenhuan would definitely comfort Zhang Zai-ching with a few words. But when she thought of the news that she received from the Lu province that Chang Sai-ching actually had a husband and son, she felt disgusted. Now seeing Chang Sai-ching's interaction, one did not know what kind of mentality it came from, but Shenhuan's heart was somewhat pleased. Chang Sao-ching had been wholeheartedly rushing towards a future of riches and honor, so she had concealed her true appearance. But now that all her riches and honor were gone, it was probably too late for regrets. He waved his hand and said impatiently, "I don't know." In his heart, however, he was thinking about the letter that his follower had given him. The letter that the long attendant gave was written by an official who had a close personal relationship with him. That official did not know where did he get the news that Shenhuan's sworn enemy had sent a memorial, and this memorial was not written on anything else but the evidence of Shenhuan and Fu Xiuyi's relationship in these few years. Even though Shenhuan did not really work for Fu Xiuyi these few years, but in the early years he was indecisive and did not want to give up the chess piece of Prince Ding, thus his attitude was somewhat ambiguous. In the eyes of others, it seemed that he and Prince Ding had long formed an alliance. And when these evidence were seen by Emperor Wenhui, one could imagine how furious Emperor Wenhui was. One feared that it would be difficult for this matter to be resolved peacefully. As for why his nemesis would suddenly have that evidence, Shenhuan actually had a vague guess in his heart. Chen Roqiu and him had been husband and wife for so many years, and because Chen Roqiu herself did not understand the court affairs, Shenhuan did not deliberately guard against Chen Roqiu. Some things were very private. If it was Chen Roqiu who stabbed him in the back, everything could be explained. Thinking of how Chen Roqiu was originally gentle and pleasant to him, but now she had gone crazy and was in a life and death struggle, Shenhuan's gaze landed on Chang Zai-ching next door and his expression gradually sank. If there was no Chang Zai-ching, he and Chen Roqiu would not be estranged from each other, and there would not be this situation now. Thinking like this, Shenhuan was indifferent towards his flesh and blood in Chang Zai-ching's womb. The matter of Shenhuan's entire family being imprisoned, on the surface it was not handled well, but those who knew the inside story knew that Emperor Wenhui was furious that Shenhuan was privately close to Fu Xiuyi. This matter implicated the entire Shen residence, and of course Prince Ding, Fu Xiuyi, would not be able to avoid it. Fu Xiuyi had a lot of hidden eyes in the palace and very quickly knew the whole story. Fu Xiuyi did not think that Shenhuan and Chen Roqiu's family matters would actually involve him. Now was the crucial time, and one must not let Emperor Wenhui be suspicious of oneself at this time. At the same time, Fu Xiuyi was also very puzzled. This year Emperor Wenhui's health was not as good as before, so he was more sensitive to the relationship between the princes and the courtiers. At such a sensitive time, there were rumors that he and Shenhuan were close. This timing seemed too coincidental. Although Shenhuan was the one who had cheated him, in reality, his losses were no less than Shenhuan's. The more he thought, the more stuffy he felt. Fu Xiuyi coldly said, unable to accomplish anything and more than enough to spoil things. Pei Lang pondered, "Your Highness, it would be best for you to distance yourself from this matter as soon as possible. No matter what, I have to prove my innocence." "Naturally I know," Fu Xiuyi said. "What does teacher think?" "The evidence is irrefutable. Trying to deny it would be more deliberate. Your Highness might as well admit it and push the matter to Shenhuan alone. Even though it is taboo for His Majesty for a prince to form a clique, if Xinhuan were to take the initiative to seek shelter, your highness would be annoyed and perhaps your majesty's heart would be more broad-minded. Fu Xiaoyi nodded his head. Teacher's thoughts are exactly the same as mine. Xinhuan's chess move could only be a sacrifice. But this kind of useless person, keeping him would cause more trouble and it would be better to get rid of him earlier. These words meant that Xinhuan was going to be sacrificed. The matters in the memorials could not be denied as there was evidence for everything and anyone who had the heart to investigate would be able to find it. But if this was Xinhuan's idea alone and it was Xinhuan who wanted to climb up to Fu Xiaoyi but Fu Xiaoyi was unmoved, then all these would be excusable and Fu Xiaoyi would be the one who was implicated. Chapter 673. It was just that in this way, Xinhuan's sins would be heavier and under Emperor Wen Hui's rage, Xinhuan's punishment would be heavier. But of course Fu Xiaoyi would not care about Xinhuan's ending. Fu Xiaoyi would never give unnecessary feelings to those who were useless to him and even cause trouble. I and the Xin family are really fated. Fu Xiaoyi's expression was cold. Many times bad things were done in the hands of the Xin family. One do not know why, but this time even though it was Chen Roqiu who started it, I feel that it is not that simple, as if there is someone manipulating it from behind. Pei Lang's heart jumped but his expression was still as indifferent as before. The urgent matter is that your highness should first prove yourself. The longer it drags on, the more His Majesty's anger would not dissipate and one fear that it would implicate your highness. Fu Xiaoyi smiled. Even though it is somewhat troublesome, it is not a dead end. But does teacher think that the Xin family should be kept or not? Pei Lang replied warmly, since they obstructed your highness's great cause, they cannot be kept. Fu Xiaoyi smiled brightly and stared at Pei Lang. Teacher's words are exactly what I have in mind. I still have some matters so teacher can leave. I will discuss with teacher about the important matters. Pei Lang nodded his head and left after bidding farewell. But he did not see that Fu Xiaoyi was staring at Pei Lang's back and a trace of darkness flashed in his eyes. The matter of Xinhuan's family being imprisoned was known by everyone and naturally it was spread to the residence of Prince Qin. In front of the stone table in the garden, Xin Yu was stunned when she heard it. It was Huang Fu Hao who looked at the spy who came to report and asked, "Oh, is it true that the entire residence is in prison?" "Absolutely true." That spy said. One heard that the emperor was very angry and wanted to sentence them to death this time. Huang Fu Hao turned his head to look at Xin Yu's expression. Xin Yu was surprised and somewhat inconceivable, but she did not see any sadness. Involuntarily, the words that Chen Roqiu said to her that day surfaced in her mind. At that time Xin Yu felt that there was a hidden meaning in Chen Roqiu's words. Could it be that the outcome of the Xin family today was all because of Chen Roqiu? Xin Yu did not dare to let Huang Fu Hao sense her emotions and pretended to lower her head to reveal a sorrowful look. How could it be? Just because the task was not done well, why would Emperor Wen Hui confiscate the family? One fear that it was not because of this reason. Huang Fu Hao smiled. One fear that there is another reason. He finished speaking and looked at Xin Yu. You want to go and see Shindarin? Xin Yu jumped in shock and stammered. If one were to go now, one fear that it would make father sad and add trouble to your highness. No need. She was married to the Wang family, so she was not implicated in the Xin family's confiscation. But if people were to discover that Xin Yu was still here, who knew if she would be locked up as well? The Xin family was heartless towards Xin Yu and Xin Yu also did not have any morality towards the Xin family. She was afraid of implicating herself and it was too late to avoid it, so why would she impatiently go up? Hearing this, Huang Fu Hao didn't dwell on this issue and just smiled. Xin Yu secretly heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. After Huang Fu Hao left, Xin Yu wanted to write a letter to Chen Roqiu and ask her if this matter was related to Chen Roqiu. Even though there was some lingering fear and panic in her heart, but seeing that the entire Shen family was in prison, Shen Yu's heart had some schadenfreude. Especially Zhang Ziqing, this woman who had occupied her mother's position, now had to suffer together with Shen Wan. Thinking like this, Shen Yu felt that she was not that lowly to be a concubine of Huang Fu Hao, and even somewhat complacent. If she were to stay in the Shen residence, the one who would be imprisoned would be her. Shen Yu thought like this, but on the second day, a secret news broke out in the Ding capital. This secret news was like a stone thrown into the bottom of the water, stirring up 1,000 waves. It made the people watching the bustle outside to find a new interesting topic to talk about and talked about it non-stop in the streets and alleys, making people talk about it with great relish. It also made the Shen family completely become a bystander's joke. Chapter 674. A shocking secret news broke out in the Ding capital. First, in the early morning before the sky brightened, there was a middle-aged man kneeling in front of the yamen and beating the drum to cry out for injustice, saying that the third master of the Shen residence, Shen Wan, had forcibly abducted a woman and made her a concubine, which was not tolerated by heaven and earth. Although the man looked like a third-rate lowly person, it was unknown where he had inherited a good tongue. It could almost be said that his tongue was like a lotus flower. Even talking and singing was very exciting, and in a short time it attracted a large group of commoners to watch the bustle. In less than half an hour, the entire Ding capital knew about this matter. Because of the heated lawsuit between the Qin and Shen family, the commoners in the Ding capital knew a lot about this legendary noble concubine, young lady Zhang Ziqing. Shen Wan was willing to divorce his wife of many years for her, and even did it without the slightest bit of face. Everyone would speculate more. Some busybodies inquired that Zhang Ziqing was the daughter of old General Shen's old friend. She was well educated, gentle and elegant, and her temperament was even better than Chen Roqiu. She was even pregnant with Shen Wan's child, so naturally people's hearts would be biased towards Zhang Ziqing. But early in the morning today, this middle-aged man brought along a youth to kneel in front of the yamen's doors and smashed the faces of those who said that Zhang Ziqing was good. It was said that Shen Wan abducted others' wife, but everyone were not fools. The distance between the Lu province and the Ding capital was not close, and in the beginning it was Zhang Ziqing herself who came to the Shen residence to seek shelter, and also claimed that she was not married. One feared that Zhang Ziqing was the one who threw herself at it. Thinking about it, Shen Wan was intelligent and refined for a lifetime, but at the end he was unable to see Zhang Ziqing's true face. After raising another's wife for such a long time, the green hat on his head could already be planted with grass. As for the words that the man said, no one doubted it at all. One reason was that the man was still holding the marriage certificate in his hands, and the white and black words and even the official seal were all in Zhang Ziqing's name. Secondly, the young man who came along looked exactly like Zhang Ziqing, except that he looked a little more silent and at a loss. Everyone pointed at him and discussed, taking it as a joke that was hard to come by in a few decades. It was said that there were many disputes in wealthy families, but he didn't expect the master of a wealthy family to be so muddle-headed. Originally, if it was in the past, this matter could be suppressed and it would not spread throughout the entire Ding capital so quickly. But today, this man had appeared out of the blue, beating the drum early in the morning to complain about his grievances. It was difficult to suppress it. Besides, the yamen servants also knew how to read people's expressions. Now that Shen Wan's entire family was locked up in prison, who would care about Shen Wan's reputation? They joined the crowd in watching the joke. In the Chen residence, in a remote courtyard, Chen Roqiu was convulsing with laughter when she heard the news that Shi Qing had inquired from outside. She had become more and more mischievous, and she had become even more slovenly. The more he behaved like this, the more he was disliked in the Chen family. But she did not care much about it, as the meaning of living was to pull down the Chen family, and there was no doubt that Chen Roqiu had done it. Chen Roqiu did it. After being Shenhuan's wife for so many years, she knew something about Shenhuan's life. Adding up bits and pieces, and also bribing a servant under Shenhuan to send this evidence to the hands of Shenhuan's nemesis. She waited uneasily for the news, and finally the good news came. The more Chen Roqiu loved Shenhuan, the more she hated him. It was Shenhuan who made her turn into such a sorry state, so she must not let Chang Xiaoqing and Shenhuan live well. When she knew that the entire Shen family was in prison, Chen Roqiu was happy, but she did not expect that on the second day, it was actually revealed that Chang Xiaoqing had a husband and son. She did not expect that she, who had been astute for a lifetime, would actually lose to a female who abandoned her husband and son. Chen Roqiu was originally laughing crazily, but as she laughed, she felt that there was some bitterness at the corner of her mouth. If she was calmer in the beginning and not so anxious, and sent people to the Lu province to investigate, perhaps the result would not be like this. Shenhuan was a person who could not tolerate sand in his eyes and knew of Chang Xiaoqing's identity. Without Chen Roqiu saying it, he would hate Chang Xiaoqing even more. Chapter 675. But there was no turning back arrow. At this step, no one could turn back anymore. Furen, what should be done now? Shi Qing asked carefully. Now that Chen Roqiu was not welcomed in the Qin family and the Shen family's matter had come to an end, to Chen Roqiu, it was not a solution to live like this in the future. I think. Chen Roqiu pressed her forehead tiredly. I already have a home, so now I can do whatever I want. After a few more days, I will leave the Ding capital to find a small place and spend the rest of my life in peace. She smiled bitterly. It is better than staying in this Ding capital and being ridiculed by everyone. Shi Qing's heart was relieved. It was better for Chen Roqiu to think like this. As long as there was hope, the future would get better and better. But I have to go and see where first. Chen Roqiu held her chest, otherwise I will not be at ease. Just as she was speaking, she saw Hua Yi rushing in from outside with a panicked expression. Furen, it is not good. Something has happened. Chen Roqiu stood up and asked with a frown, what is the matter? Second young lady. Upon hearing Xinyu, Chen Roqiu's heart suddenly jumped wildly. She grabbed Hua Yi's hand and asked anxiously, what happened to Yue? Hua Yi was about to cry. The matter of second young lady in the residence of Prince Qin has been discovered. When Xinyu was brought out of the residence of Prince Qin, Huang Fu Hao did not stop her. Even when Xinyu was crying like a pear blossom in the rain, grabbing his sleeves and begging, Huang Fu Hao only comforted her, nothing will happen. You go with them. There was not a bit of protection for Xinyu in his words. Those officials that came were smart, and when they saw Huang Fu Hao's attitude, the last bit of concern was gone. Almost rudely, they escorted Xinyu out. Huang Fu Hao looked at the group of people leaving with Xinyu and could not help but frown. He asked the guard beside him, go and inquire about what exactly happened in the Ming Qi's palace. Early in the morning, there were officials that came knocking and said that they wanted to take away the daughter of the third household of the Shen family, Xinyu. Ever since Xinyu entered the residence of Prince Qin, she had never told anyone about it. No one would have thought that the daughter of an official would become the crown prince's concubine. But now, these officials had somehow gotten the news and had come to King Qin's mansion to demand for him. At the end, Emperor Wenhui left some leeway for Huang Fu Hao to be polite. The reason for bringing Xinyu away was because Xinyu was also a member of the Shen family, thus she could not escape from the relationship, but there was no mention of Xinyu and Shen Dongling exchanging marriage. Most likely it was to deliberately avoid this problem. But how big of a storm could a concubine stir up? Just because of this, Emperor Wenhui did not need to make such a big fanfare. Huang Fu Hao thought that there must be something fishy about it. Since the other party came prepared, there was no need for Huang Fu Hao to go against them. To him, Shen Yu was just a means to understand Shen Miao, and coincidentally there were some good looks that he could play with, thus he did not really put Shen Yu in his heart. It was not worthwhile to make things ugly for Shen Yu and Emperor Wenhui, thus he went with the flow. But Huangfu House still knew nothing about what happened in Ming Qi's palace, and because of this, there were still many things that he did not understand. After pondering for a moment, Huangfu House summoned the attendant beside him and said, "Make a trip to the residence of Prince Ding and help me bring a message." These matters in the Shen family were enough to be called a pot of chaos. It was as if a thread had suddenly sprung up on a calm bandage, and when the thread was pulled, the originally embroidered pattern was instantly messed up and one could not see the original appearance. Chapter 676. First it was Shenwan who did not do his job well and was sent to prison. Afterwards there were husbands and sons who were often in Qinglu province who knelt at the yaman's doors and beat the drum to complain about their grievances. Until now, it was discovered that the D daughter of the third household had become a concubine of the crown prince residence in the Qin country, thus implicating the matter of the third household's D daughter and the second household's Shu daughter in exchanging marriage. This made one sigh at how chaotic the inner courtyard of the Shen residence was, and at the same time made one wonder if the Shen family had offended any ghosts or gods that they would have such bad luck. It was really strange. It was in the afternoon and Shen Miao pulled the curtains back, intending to take a nap. The Shen family's matters had already progressed according to the steps that she had planned. Shen Miao could roughly guess what Emperor Wenhui would do. She just took off her cloak when she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She turned her head and saw that in the shadows, one did not know when Xie Jingxing had come over and was leaning on her couch. His hand was carelessly touching a furry thing, and that thing was arching up and down. Upon a closer look, it was the white tiger that Shen Miao had seen before. The tiger seemed to have grown a size bigger, and even its fur was glossy and smooth, making it look extremely beautiful. But Shen Miao did not have this in her eyes. She took a deep breath and said, "Who allowed you to go up my couch?" Xie Jingxing was really taking advantage of her nose. She was used to him coming in through the window at night, and now he dared to go up her couch in broad daylight. After a few more days, would he be able to swagger in from the main doors to drink tea, and the entire residence would line the streets to welcome him? Audacious to the point of being unreasonable. Xie Jingxing said, "Specially came to congratulate you." "Why do you have such a reaction?" "Congratulate." Shen Miao was startled. "What congratulation?" "The Shen family is in prison as you wish." Xie Jingxing released his hand and that white tiger gave an "woo" sound and happily jumped around on Shen Miao's bed. It even used Shen Miao's good quality silk bedding to grind its claws, making one feel distressed. Xie Jingxing touched his chin. Chang Sai Qing's reputation is ruined, Shen Wan regretted, Chen Roqiu was implicated and Shen Yu was also in prison. No matter how one looks at it, it is a matter worth congratulating. His eyes curved and there were sparkles as he said, "Are you not happy?" Shen Miao felt a little uncomfortable to be told so bluntly about the result of scheming against others. She took 2 steps forward and grabbed Xie Jingxing's sleeves, wanting to pull him up from her couch. As she was pulling, she said, "It is enough to congratulate verbally or prepare some money as a gift. Prince Rui need not personally make a trip. How can that show this king's sincerity?" Shen Miao used a lot of strength, but Xie Jingxing did not move at all. He swept a glance at Shen Miao and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Moreover, in this round you also cheated Fu Xiuyi, so it is even more worth celebrating." Shen Miao's heart jumped and her hands involuntarily loosened. Xie Jingxing suddenly raised his eyebrows and grabbed Shen Miao's hands and pulled her towards him. Shen Miao was caught off guard and was unsteady in front of her and fell straight forward onto Xie Jingxing's chest. The young man had a smile on his face, but his gaze was as sharp as a blade. His tone was clearly gentle like a lover's whisper, but every word he said was cold. He said in a low voice, Huang Fu Hao was also dragged in, thus the old emperor would not easily let Fu Xiuyi off. This move of yours is clever, but are you not afraid of attracting fire to yourself? Shen Miao looked up at Xie Jingxing. 2 years ago, the youth was romantic and beautiful, but at the end he was somewhat frivolous. Perhaps he did it on purpose. 2 years later, he was truly exposed in front of everyone, but it made one feel that he was unfathomable. It was clearly a cynical tone, as if everything in the world was just a casual smile. But the ambition that was hidden under that handsome skin was the most frightening. Chapter 677. Asking a tiger for its skin. These words appeared in Shen Miao's heart. Yes, what Xie Jingxing said was right. Chen Roqiu's and Shen Wan's internal affairs were just a prelude, and Chang Ziqing only received the punishment that she deserved for being abandoned. And all of these were just a pretense, a smokescreen that she had set up for the last move. Shen Miao had never forgotten her real enemy, the most terrifying enemy, the most hated enemy, Fu Xiuyi. Shen Wan already had a relationship with Prince Ding, Fu Xiuyi, and now Shen Yu had become Huang Fu Hao's person. Shen Yu was Shen Wan's daughter, so this made one think that perhaps Huang Fu Hao and Fu Xiuyi had some relationship. Being overly suspicious of Emperor Wen Hui, he would definitely send people to investigate. If Huang Fu Hao and Fu Xiuyi really did not have any relationship, naturally one would not be able to find anything. Unfortunately, both of them had the intention to form an alliance. If Emperor Wen Hui were to investigate seriously, it was highly possible that he would find some interesting things. At this critical juncture, it was a fatal blow to Fu Xiuyi. His road to the emperor, with Emperor Wen Hui's suspicions and hidden obstruction, would not be that smooth. She thought that this step was well hidden, but did not expect that the purple-clad youth in front of her could see through it in one glance, and see the crucial step that she had taken under the colorful outer shell. She wanted to get up from Xie Jingxing's body, but Xie Jingxing held her arm with one hand and the other hand supported the back of her head. Shen Miao was almost lying on Xie Jingxing's body. And when they breathed in, the distance was so ambiguous that she could hear the violent heartbeat, but did not know if it was hers or his. If there was someone coming in from the outside, Shen Miao would not want her innocence for the rest of her life. But Xie Jingxing was a frivolous person and did not feel that there was anything wrong with his actions. Shen Miao suddenly smiled and slowly opened her mouth. Invite fire to burn one's body. Xie Jingxing stared at her unruffled. The fire has already found me. Shen Miao's voice had an indescribable coldness and heaviness as she said, Does Prince Rui think that I still have a way out? She never had a way out. Even if there was no blood feud, no Wan Yun Fu Ming, no rebirth for revenge, Shen Exane's merits would surpass the Lord, and there would be a day that the first household of the Shen family would face the end of destruction. In order to protect the Shen family, Fu Xiuyi would become her enemy. Of course there's a way out, the young man suddenly said. Shen Miao's fingers that were holding onto his clothes moved slightly. His side profile was handsome beyond compare, and his dark eyes were so beautiful that they could almost drown in them. His long eyelashes were slightly warm under the sunlight that seeped in through the curtains. He said indifferently, With this king here, the fire won't burn you. If you're afraid, you can hide here. His voice was as mellow as wine as it floated into Shen Miao's ears. This king will cut open a path of retreat for you. Shen Miao looked at him. He spoke carelessly and did things in a frivolous manner, but it always gave one the illusion that his promises were heavy and could be done as he said. But why did she suddenly feel like crying? If in her previous life in the palace, someone had said to her, Come here, I will cut a path of retreat for you. Would she not walk down a dark path, and would she not end up in such a tragic state that her family would perish? the interaction between people was really strange. No matter if Xie Jingxing's words were true or false, Shen Miao's heart was gently tickled in front of her eyes. It was as if there were butterflies flying out of her heart. Xie Jingxing suddenly kept the smile on his lips and looked at Shen Miao seriously. He frowned slightly and whispered in Shen Miao's ear, "But why is your heartbeat suddenly so loud?" Chapter 678. Shen Miao fiercely pushed Xie Jingxing and sat up all of a sudden. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up and his hands were lazily placed behind his head as he said, "Are you ill? It is you who are ill." Shen Miao took a deep breath and said, "Prince Rui has congratulated enough. Now one can leave. I am also a pure young lady and would not be able to marry out if seen by others." Xie Jingxing frowned. "Are you not going to be an empress? How would an ordinary person be able to marry you?" Seeing that Shen Miao was about to get angry again, Xie Jingxing then sat up and grabbed the tiger that was chasing the pendant on the couch and threw it into his embrace. He glanced at Shen Miao and laughed, "Since it is a happy event, how about I add flowers to the brocade?" Shen Miao was surprised for a moment and subconsciously looked at Xie Jingxing to ask, "What do you want to do?" "I do not see eye to eye with Fu Xiuyi," Xie Jingxing said lightly, "even though one cannot solve it together." He winked at Shen Miao frivolously. "It is not bad to throw stones when one is down." Just as Shen Miao expected, when the matter of Shen Yu being arrested and sent to prison reached Fu Xiuyi's ears, Fu Xiuyi, who would not change his expression even if Mount Tai collapsed, could not help but turn pale. Why did Shen Yu suddenly enter the residence of Prince Qin? He asked his subordinate. One heard that second Shen young lady was not willing to marry to the young master of the Wang family and exchanged the marriage with the Shu-born third young lady of the Shen residence. It was just that at that time it was not convenient to publicize such a scandal. Afterwards second Shen young lady secretly ran out of the residence and inadvertently got involved with the crown prince of Qin and became his concubine. Enough. Fu Xiuyi interrupted the attendant's words and pressed his forehead before saying hatefully, "This group of people from the Shen family. Ever since he got involved with the Shen family, nothing went smoothly for him. One had to know that a few days ago when Shen Wan came over to seek shelter from him, he gave Shen Wan a difficult problem and did not expect that before it started, Shen Wan would fall into it. So be it, but he was also implicated. Currently Emperor Wen Hui was very suspicious of him and Fu Xiuyi managed to arrange everything with great difficulty and was prepared to push everything onto Shen Wan, so that Emperor Wen Hui would dispel his suspicions. Who knew that at this critical juncture, Huang Fu Hao would be dragged into this? On the surface it was Shen Yu's matter, but in fact it was related to the relationship between Ming Qi and the Qin country. Everyone was well aware that the Qin country and Ming Qi would most likely take the path of an alliance. Among the 9 princes, whoever was closer to Huang Fu Hao would be a thorn in Emperor Wen Hui's eyes. Emperor Wen Hui naturally did not wish for his son to be close to Huang Fu Hao. Emperor Wen Hui hoped that in the eyes of the Qin country, he would be the only monarch. At such a sensitive time, Shen Yu was in the residence of the Crown Prince of Qin. What would Emperor Wen Hui think? Would Shen Yu be a chess piece that Shen Wan used to win over the Crown Prince of Qin and Shen Wan was working for Fu Xiuyi? Fu Xiuyi and Huang Fu Hao were really tied together now. The more Fu Xiuyi thought about it, the more his head ached. Even if he had always planned in his chest, he did not know what to do with such a sudden situation today. After all, he did not know about the exchange of marriage between Shen Yu and Shen Dongling, and did not know that Huang Fu Hao had taken Shen Yu as a concubine. This matter came too coincidentally. A trace of ruthlessness appeared on Fu Xiuyi's cold face. There must be someone scheming behind the scenes. It is obvious that the spearhead is aimed at me. Shen Wan's matter is fake and pushing me into the water is the real thing. I want to see who is the one playing tricks behind the scenes. A young advisor carefully asked, "What does your highness intend to do next?" Imperial father is suspicious and rashly clarifying would be self-defeating. Fu Xiu-yi said, "One can only wait and see the changes. But the first thing to be clear is who is scheming behind me. Perhaps it is Prince Shou or Prince Xian." "Impossible." Fu Xiu-yi flatly denied, "This is not in line with their usual style and methods. Moreover, it involves Huangfu House, so when they make a move, it would be hard to avoid leaving traces. If it was discovered by Imperial Father, the gains would outweigh the losses." Chapter 679. The advisors looked at each other in dismay and no longer spoke. Pei Lang stood in the middle of the advisors. Fu Xiu-yi did not have the intention to ask him, and he also did not take the initiative to speak. But he could feel Fu Xiu-yi's gaze on him from above. Looking at Pei Lang's calm face, one did not know why, but another face suddenly appeared in front of Fu Xiu-yi's eyes. That young female's face was delicate with a pair of eyes as clear as a mirror, just like a little beast that made one lovable. But she always frowned and put on airs, which made Fu Xiu-yi think of the head of the inner palace in Kuan-Ning Palace. Perhaps compared to the head of the inner palace, she showed a more noble and dignified air. A phoenix? Or a ferocious beast? Fu Xiu-yi sneered. She was only a female. Even if she had great abilities, it was impossible for her to do all these things. But even so, Fu Xiu-yi did not forget that Shen Miao might have a close relationship with that Prince Rui from the Great Liang. Prince Rui from the Great Liang had a lukewarm attitude towards the entire imperial family of Ming Qi and occasionally deliberately targeted him. Was it because of Shen Miao? If it was really because of Shen Miao, this Prince Rui made a move and Fu Xiu-yi had grasped the other's weakness. If one grasped the other's weakness, the next step would be to make a move mercilessly. This was also Fu Xiu-yi's style of doing things. He had to return the favor without hesitation so that he wouldn't waste the gift that the other party had given him. Fu Xiu-yi clenched his fists and slowly calmed down. He said, "Find a few people to guard the residence of Prince Rui and keep watch day and night." He slowly glanced at the advisors and lightly said, "We will also double the number of guards in our own mansion. Don't let a fly in, and don't let a mosquito fly out." Pei Lang's heart jumped as he felt that Fu Xiu-yi's words seemed to be pointing at something. But his sleeves were still hanging down and his face was indifferent. On the other hand, when the advisors around him heard this, they all whispered to each other as if they had smelled some clues. Fu Xiu-yi's anger dissipated and a smile floated up as usual. It was just that his smile was only halfway when a guard came in from outside and said, "Your Highness, His Highness the Crown Prince had sent someone to pass a message to you." Fu Xiu-yi was startled and said, "Call him in." Just as he was about to get up, he suddenly realized something and his expression changed greatly. Bad. Emperor Wenhui knew about Shen Yu's matter and suspected that Fu Xiu-yi and Huangfu Hao were involved. One feared that at this time, he would spare no effort to investigate the relationship between Fu Xiu-yi and Huangfu Hao. Huangfu Hao did not know what had happened, and did not know the real reason why Shen Wan had been arrested. He thought that he had come to ask, but unfortunately, he had bumped into the muzzle of the gun. One feared that she had already been caught by Emperor Wenhui's people, thus she would not be able to wash herself clean even if she jumped into the Yellow River. At this moment, his crime was almost confirmed. Fu Xiu-yi suddenly sat down on the chair. In Ming Qi's heavenly prison, there were currently quite a number of people locked up. Shen Yu and Chen Roqiu did not expect that they would reunite with Shen Wan's entire family under such circumstances. Shen Wan also did not expect that Shen Yu would actually become Huangfu Hao's concubine. Shen Wan was after all a person who had gone through many trials and tribulations in court. Others could not see it clearly, but he understood it very clearly. Even though he knew that he would not be able to escape the death penalty this time, but Shin Yu had implicated Huang Fu Hao, which made him feel even more hopeless. Emperor Wen Hui would not deal with Huang Fu Hao because Huang Fu Hao was the crown prince of the Qin country. Fu Xiaoyi could also think of ways to protect himself. Fu Xiaoyi had many capable people under him, and because of suspicions, he would punish a prince, unless Emperor Wen Hui was not afraid of the world being in chaos. Saying it this way, the one that could be sacrificed was the Shin family. Shin Yu's heart was afraid and angry. When she entered the prison and was locked together with the Shin family's females, she anxiously pulled Chen Roqiu and asked, "Mother, why are we also arrested? Do we not have any relations with the Shin family? What exactly is going on?" When Zhang Ziqing saw it, her heart was somewhat refreshed. She originally regretted that she picked the Shin residence. Not only did she not gain riches, she also wanted to lose her life and future. So to speak, Shin Yu who left home and Chen Roqiu who was divorced were instead lucky. Originally Zhang Ziqing did not need to be involved in these matters, but the more she thought about it, the more unwilling she was. She did not think that Shin Yu and Chen Roqiu would be sent over, and Zhang Ziqing was extremely happy. When one was unlucky, one would always want to catch a few of the same people to go to hell together. Zhang Ziqing said, "How is second young lady not a person of the Shin residence? You are master's daughter." Shin Yu sneered, "It is not your turn to interrupt." Chapter 680. That's not for a whore like you to interrupt. Zhang Ziqing was surprised for a moment. She had long known that Shin Yu was not as refined as she looked on the surface, but did not expect that Shin Yu's mouth would be so powerful. She subconsciously looked toward Shin Wan, but what surprised her was that Shin Wan did not even look at her, as if he turned a deaf ear to Shin Yu's words. When Shin Yu saw Zhang Ziqing's appearance, she said proudly, "Why? You still want my father to speak up for you? Now who in the entire capital does not know that you, Zhang Ziqing, are used shoes that were slept with in the Lu province? It is said that prostitutes are heartless and actors are unrighteous. Seeing that you claim to be well-mannered and bite on words, why are you also as shameless? You are not even as good as the top courtesan in the brothel. You! What nonsense are you talking about?" Zhang Ziqing's heart jumped and subconsciously replied. She had always been locked up in prison and knew nothing about the outside world. She did not know that the matter of her in the Lu province had already spread out, and now the entire Ding capital was treating her as a joke. "You do not know." Shin Yu was angry in her heart and simply used words to provoke her. "Your husband and son in the Lu province missed you so much that they specially came to the Ding capital to look for you." Shin Yu looked at Shin Wan maliciously. She was also quite resentful toward Shin Wan and continued to speak unhurriedly, that Tianli had already knelt at the Yaman's residence's entrance and beat the drum to complain of injustice, saying that our Shin residents had forcefully snatched a commoner's wife. Zhang Ziqing's body trembled and knew that she could no longer hide it but looked toward Shin Yu. Seeing that Shin Wan did not have much surprise on his face, she asked in a trembling voice, You already knew about it." "What?" The one who spoke was old Shin Furen, who had been staring at the other side. She thought that Shin Yu and Zhang Ziqing were not on good terms, so she said those humiliating words. Now she finally recovered and asked in a sharp voice, "You have married before? You still have a son?" Zhang Ziqing did not answer, but Chen Roqiu, who was watching coldly at the side, smiled, "Mother still do not know. The daughter-in-law that you have carefully picked for your son is now someone from other families. The Shin family raises daughter-in-law for other families, and this Zhang Ziqing's son, after all, is not surnamed Shin. The things that are said about the Shin family outside are really wonderful. Mother should also listen to it." Shin Guo was also shocked by this sudden news. Zhang Ziqing finally recovered to her senses and looked at Chen Roqiu before sneering. She no longer concealed her docile look and smashed the pot. So what if I have married before? So what if she had a son? How could the Shin family be as clean as you said? It's just a pot calling the kettle black. What's more, I didn't even enjoy a few days of happiness after getting married, and now I have to suffer. It's hard to say who's the one who's going to suffer. When old Shinfuren heard it, anger rose in her heart. Being locked up in prison without rhyme or reason, she was half afraid and half irritated. She had no way to vent her anger, and Sang Zai-ching had hit the tip of the spear. Without saying a word, she pounced on Sang Zai-ching and scolded as she pulled Sang Zai-ching's hair. Slut! I'll let you cheat the Shin family. I'll let you cheat the Shin family. Shameless! How would Sang Zai-ching be someone who would meekly submit to adversity? If one were to say that she had designs in the Shin residence so she could keep a low profile, now that her mask had been pierced, she could not care so much. She immediately started fighting with old Shinfuren. Even though old Shinfuren was old, when she fought, she still had the shrewdness of her youth as she had mingled in the streets before. Sang Zai-ching was young and vigorous, but she had always prided herself as a scholar and did not fight with others, thus she was not able to gain any advantage. As both of them were fighting, they were cursing at each other and both were in a mess. When Shingue saw the situation, he wanted to pull them back, but males and females were separated in the prison, thus the spirit was willing but the strength was insufficient. It was even more impossible for Shin Yu and Chen Roqiu, who were locked up together, to pull them back. Chen Roqiu looked on coldly and Shin Yu even laughed out loud. All of this abnormally stopped when Sang Zai-ching cried out in pain. Chapter 681. Old Shinfuren pushed Sang Zai-ching away. Her face was full of nail scratches and her hair and clothes were in a mess, but she looked at the person on the ground in satisfaction. Sang Zai-ching was curled up on the ground with her body bent over. She hugged her lower abdomen and her face was contorted in pain as she moaned loudly. Below her, a pool of blood gradually flowed out. She actually had a miscarriage in prison. One did not know where old Shinfuren had touched Sang Zai-ching, but these days the food in the prison was not to one's liking and Sang Zai-ching's body was weak. Most likely when she was fighting with old Shinfuren, she was injured in the abdomen. Shingue was at a loss as he looked at Shinwan, but saw that Shinwan's gaze did not change at all as he looked at Sang Zai-ching painfully rolling on the ground, like he was looking at a stranger. As for old Shinfuren, she looked at Sang Zai-ching almost crazily and scolded, "Slut! All of you deserve to die. Bitch!" Shin Yu was somewhat afraid of blood and seeing that there was more and more blood below Sang Zai-ching that the ground was dyed red, she gradually started to be afraid and squeezed closer to Chen Roqiu. Chen Roqiu hugged Shin Yu tightly and looked at Sang Zai-ching as the corner of her lips slowly rose. Sang Zai-ching's consciousness was somewhat fuzzy from the pain. She tried hard to call out to the jailer, hoping that someone would discover that her body was unwell and find a doctor for her. However, the prison guards came and went, occasionally casting disdainful and mocking glances at her. They had no intention of helping her at all. One did not know how long she had been moaning for, but Sang Zai-ching gradually could not even make a sound. Most likely she was only breathing in and not out, as if she was about to pass away at any moment. No one spoke in the cell. It was eerily quiet. Everyone of the Shin family looked at Sang Zai-ching with disgust, impatience, ridicule, fear and disdain, but there was no sympathy at all. Disasters would distort human nature, and when one's status was on the opposite side, there would be no sympathy. From Shin Yu and Chen Roqiu's point of view, Sang Zai-ching reaped what she sowed, and from Shinwan's point of view, Sang Zai-ching deceived him and her death was not to be pitied. Shingue was not a good person and old Shinfuren could not wait to tear Sang Zai-ching into pieces. In Sang Zai-ching's life, The first half of her life was most likely very smooth sailing, and even though the second half was not smooth sailing, she thought that with her own intellect, not to mention flying up the branches to become a phoenix, it was still possible to obtain riches and honor. She could fight and snatch for riches and honor, disregarding her conscience and face. But who knew that the riches and honor pit she plunged headfirst into was a burial ground, and the people she tolerated and dealt with were even scarier than jackals and wolves. At this time, Zhang Ziqing suddenly remembered the Lu province, the incompetent husband who loved to drink and the son who always silently chopped firewood to feed the chickens. She muttered in a daze, "Why Xing?" Shen Yu frowned, "What is she talking about?" Chen Roqiu shook her head. "Mother, why do you look so lethargic?" Shen Yu held her hand tightly. "Is this matter very serious? When can we get out?" "Don't worry, this is just a small matter. His Majesty will let us out once he finds out. Don't worry. You should rest for a while so that you won't have the strength later." Chen Roqiu smiled as she answered. With Chen Roqiu's assurance, Shen Yu's heart was slightly at ease and indeed felt somewhat tired, so she leaned on Chen Roqiu and closed her eyes. When old Shen Furen heard Chen Roqiu's words, she gradually calmed down. Even though she was not very satisfied with Chen Roqiu, one would always know who was better after comparison. With Zhang Ziqing as a foil, old Shen Furen felt that Chen Roqiu was still not bad. She also closed her eyes to rest. No one cared if Zhang Ziqing was dead or alive. Chapter 682. Chen Roqiu glanced at Zhang Ziqing and sneered before thinking of something, and her gaze became desperate. She lied to Shen Yu about whether there was a way out this time. They might not be able to make it out alive. No one understood Shen Wan's eyes better than Chen Roqiu. If there was a glimmer of hope, Shen Wan would not have such a reaction. He sat there coldly and somewhat woodenly, as if he did not care about anything, no matter if it was the Shen family becoming the joke of the Ding capital, or the scuffle between old Shen Furen and Zhang Ziqing, or Zhang Ziqing's miscarriage. Shen Wan was expressionless. Shen Wan was in despair. Even Shen Wan was in despair, so there was no reason for Chen Roqiu to have any other way to survive. It was just that when she really knew this ending, Chen Roqiu was not as unacceptable as she thought. Perhaps it was because Chen Roqiu had seen the fickleness of human nature when the Qin family and the Shen family were in a lawsuit, or perhaps the matter of being divorced by Shen Wan had left Chen Roqiu scarred. At the moment, Chen Roqiu was physically and mentally exhausted, and Zhang Ziqing had ended up in such a state, so she did not care much. Since they were going to die, wasn't it better to die together? Even if they died, they would still be a family. Chen Roqiu thought. Third younger brother. In the silence, someone was the first to break the silence. It was Shen Gui. He asked, "Don't you feel that our Shen family seems to have encountered some evil in recent years? When father was around, there weren't so many things. Ever since Shen Gui was found to have damaged the root of his offspring, he had been muddle-headed every day. It was rare for him to be clear-headed for once." Whether it was true or not, he had asked a serious question. Shen Wan glanced at him, and one could not distinguish between joy and anger in his tone. Is it when father is around or when Shen Xian is around? Shen Gui was at a loss for words. Indeed, it was not accurate to say that old General Shen was around. To be accurate, when the Shen residence went downhill, it started when the first household separated from the family. In fact, 2 years ago, when Shen Xian had just returned to the capital, their careers were not smooth. It was just that at that time the Shen family had not separated yet, and their colleagues in the official circles had to give face to Shen Xian and flatter them. After Shen Xian left the capital, those people did not have any misgivings, and the Shen family deteriorated day by day. Even though one did not want to admit it, it was indeed a fact. Without Shin Xayan, the Shin family was the same as those random official families in the Ding capital. There was nothing special about it. However, Shin Wan's words didn't mean what he said on the surface. Shin Gui asked hesitantly, "You are saying that someone is scheming against our Shin family? You were also schemed against this time." Shin Wan smiled strangely, but no one knew what he was smiling about. Could it be that Shin Xayan caused trouble behind the scenes? Shin Gui suddenly understood. Chen Rochio, who was sitting quietly at the side, opened her mouth at this time. That little slut that Luo Shuaiyan gave birth to is very evil. Did you all not discover that as long as one is related to Shin Miao, one would not end up well? Shin Wan and Shin Gui looked at Chen Rochio at the same time. Chen Rochio did not seem to see their gazes and continued. First it was the second household Shin Qing and Shin Yuan, and now it is the third household's turn. Initially second Saw did not gain any advantage in her hands. Come to think of it, if one were to say that the Shin residents had frequent mishaps, it would be better to say that it was the beginning of her great change in temperament. One was very strange as one's thoughts were constantly changing. In the past, in Shin Wan and Shin Gui's eyes, Shin Miao at most had a little cleverness, but how would she have such great ability? But now that she had fallen to such a state, and hearing Chen Rochio's words, it was actually so. Just take Princess Mingyan as an example. Did she not also inexplicably die after forming enmity with Shin Miao? Until now there was no investigation of the reason. Chapter 683. Chen Wan said in a deep voice, just based on her alone, she would not be able to do this, unless there is an expert guiding her from behind, or she found a backer. One fear that it is not that Shin Miao found a backer. Shin Gui pondered, it is the Shin family that found a backer. He seemed to have thought of something and slapped his knee. Why didn't Shin Xayan fall to his death on the battlefield? I was just saying, why was everything going wrong for so many years? So it was because Shin Xayan was causing trouble behind the scenes. He said it righteously but did not mention how many times the Shin family had caused trouble for Shin Xayan. No matter what, this matter is more or less related to Shin Xayan. At this time, Chen Rochio calmed down, and the words that she said were more pertinent and useful, otherwise it would not be that when something happened, the entire Shin residence was implicated but only the first household was safe and sound. Everyone fell silent. After a long while, Shin Gui fiercely gritted his teeth and said, "Since that's the case, then we have to drag them down with us this time. Even if we are unable to obtain any benefits, their first household should not think of having an easy time." He looked at Shin Wan, third younger brother. "Let's think of ways to get Shin Xayan involved." "No." Shin Wan calmly said, "The matter has already reached the point of conviction. To implicate Shin Xayan at this time, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to see that this is framing. The more it is like this, the more His Majesty will feel that the first branch and us are not the same kind of people, that we are treacherous officials, and the first branch is loyal. The first branch took advantage of it for nothing." Shin Gui said angrily, "Then are we just going to let him off like this?" Shin Wan sneered, "After suffering such a big loss, moreover father was biased toward Shin Xayan, and after fighting for so many years, I do not believe that we will still lose. Even if we cannot pull Shin Xayan down, we will at least peel off a layer of Shin Xayan's skin." "Third brother, you mean?" Shin Gui was puzzled. Shin Wan lowered his voice, "If His Majesty can't get through, there will always be someone else. Take a guess. Now that this has happened, of course we are the ones suffering, but who is more angry than we are?" Chen Rochio frowned. "Prince Ding." "Not bad." Shin Wan looked at Chen Rochio calmly. At this time, it was useless to blame Chen Rochio for submitting the evidence in a fit of anger. Moreover, the reason was that Shin Wan divorced Chen Rochio because of Zhang Ziqing. In the long run, perhaps someone had set up a trap and schemed all of them, so what was the point of blaming anyone? However, all of them were disheartened and exhausted. However, even before death, a poisonous snake would never forget to take a bite out of its victim. The Shin family was such a poisonous snake. Shinwan said coldly, "Our every move is being monitored by others. There is no doubt that there are Prince Ding's people among them, and to talk more about the first household of the Shin family would make Prince Ding suspicious." Previously, when Prince Ding wanted him to matchmake Shin Miao and Prince Shou, he already had some doubts about Shin Miao. Now that the eldest household of the Shin family was mentioned, once Prince Ding thought that it was the eldest household of the Shin family who cheated him and made him suspected by Emperor Wenhui. One fear that he would immediately want to destroy the eldest household of the Shin family. What kind of person was Prince Ding? He was the one who hid the deepest among the 9 princes and was more like a smiling tiger compared to Prince Xian. Being stared at by Prince Ding, Shinwan believed that the eldest household of the Shin family would have a hard time in the future. Even if one could not change the outcome, one must still bury a malignant tumor for the eldest household of the Shin family. There would be a day when it would sprout. He muttered softly and said in a voice that only he could hear, "I will wait for you on the road to the netherworld, eldest brother." The case regarding Shinwan and the Ding capital was closed very quickly, so much that when the commoners knew of the news, they were somewhat baffled. Chapter 684. The former formidable great general Shin residence was searched, the servants were exiled and the masters were all beheaded. There had not been such a big case in Ming Chi for a long time, and this case did not seem to be that serious. The officials seemed to be deliberately keeping it a secret, and the crime was only not doing a good job and causing a big disaster. It was just that no one knew what that big disaster was. Being an official was like this. If the monarch wanted the official to die, the official had to die. If Emperor Wenhui wanted to execute any official, sometimes he would not even bother to think of a reason. Especially for people like the Shin family, the only officials were Shinwan and Shingue, and these 2 people were gradually declining in their official careers, so there was no one to speak up for them. Of course, there seemed to be an invisible hand pushing it. In short, everything happened so fast that one did not expect it. On the day of the execution, Shin Miao wanted to go and see. Luo Tan looked at Shin Miao strangely and asked, "What is Biao's youngest sister going to see?" That kind of bloody scene, the head would roll down and one would have nightmares at night. It is better not to go. Shin Xan and Luo Shuayan would not go to see as they still had military affairs. Of course, even if there were no military affairs, they would also not go. Towards the Shin family, Luo Shuayan did not have any feelings, but Shin Xan most likely had some, but those complicated feelings were all wiped out by the things that the Shin family did all these years. It was better to not meet and would not take the initiative to find trouble for oneself. Shin Miao said, "I want to go and see. I have not seen a beheading before." Luo Tan. She said in a flustered and exasperated manner, "What is there to see about a beheading?" But in her heart she was secretly anxious for Shin Miao. Females were always soft-hearted, and even though the entire Shin family was not a good person, Shin Miao had been with them for such a long time, and it was inevitable that there would be some sorrow. If she were to go up now, she would only be finding trouble for herself. "I will accompany younger sister," Shin Qiu said. Shin Qiu knew Shin Miao's stubborn character, and if he did not let her go, Shin Miao would sneak out herself to save trouble. He was not afraid, and with the guards by his side, they would be able to protect Shin Miao. "I will also go along," Luo Ling said with a smile. "I have not seen a beheading before." "What are you talking about, cousin?" Luo Tan glanced at Luo Ling. Previously in the northwestern region, it is not like one had not seen people being executed by military orders. One could not even bear to look at the beheading. What first time? Luo Ling's smile was somewhat stiff as he did not expect that his own Tang younger sister would tear him down like this. When Shen Qiu heard it, he looked meaningfully at Luo Ling until Luo Ling felt uneasy before saying, "Then let's go together." When Luo Tan saw that everyone had left, she gritted her teeth and stomped her feet before saying, "Then I will also follow. I don't want to stay in the residence alone. Biao youngest sister, you must cover my eyes properly later." When the group of people arrived at the execution ground, the onlookers outside had already surrounded the execution platform in 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Because Shen Qiu and his entourage were accompanied by guards, the commoners took the initiative to clear the way. The surrounding people recognized Shen Qiu and whispered as they pointed at Shen Qiu and Shen Miao. One had long known that the first household of the Shen family and the second and third household were not on good terms, but one did not expect that when the second and third household were executed, the siblings of the first household would come to watch the execution. Some people said that the first household had gained a blessing in disguise. That year when they were forced by the second and third household to remove their names, they managed to escape this calamity. Some people also said that the siblings of Shen Xayan were too cold-blooded, that they actually watched their family members being executed without being moved. On the execution platform, Shen Wan and his entourage were all kneeling with shackles on, wearing dirty prisoners' uniform and unkempt hair and dirty faces. There was no trace of the previous rich and powerful appearance. And Shen Yu and old Shen Furen's mouths were still stuffed with rags, and it seemed that one could see Shen Yu desperately shaking her head with fear in her eyes. Shen Yu and old Shen Furen had always been very afraid of death. Most likely they were unable to accept this fact up till now and were still thinking that there was still room for redemption. Chapter 685. Shen Miao's lips slightly hooked up. Her eyes swept across the people on the stage one by one. Shen Wan, Chen Roqiu, Shen Gue, Shen Yu, old Shen Furen. Hearing that Chang Sai-Qing had a miscarriage in prison, when the jailer found her the next day and carried her out, her body was already stiff. It was better to let him bleed to death while he was still alive. At least he wouldn't have to watch helplessly as his head was chopped off and his corpse was left intact. But what was the use of that? Her life was gone and the entire Ding capital knew that she abandoned her husband and son. "Biao youngest sister, what are you thinking about?" Luo Tan asked softly. "Thinking about the past." Shen Miao gently answered. She thought of when she was fighting for power with Mei Furen in the inner palace. It was this group of people on the stage who stabbed the first household without leaving any leeway. They caused the death of Shen Qiu, caused the death of Luo Shuiyan, caused Shen Xayan to be haggard and caused Wan Yu and Fu Ming to not have a strong support from their mother's family, and could only be sacrificed in the imperial family's throne room. They obviously had the most orthodox blood but lived like a lowly Shu son or Shu daughter. And all of these were given by these people in front of her. Shen Yu said, "Fifth younger sister, we are not a family. Not a family, but an enemy. At least from now on, with the death of this group of people on the stage, she and those jackals, wolves, tigers and leopards of the Shen family no longer had any relationship at all." Shen Yu looked around in a panic on the stage but suddenly looked towards Shen Miao's direction. At the same time when she saw Shen Miao, a strong hatred burst out from her eyes. If it was not for the fact that she was being held in shackles, Shen Yu would have crossed the crowd to Shen Miao and scratched Shen Miao's face. Shen Miao smiled at her through the crowd and did not care if Shen Yu could see clearly, but she slightly raised her chin and looked at her with a critical and condescending gaze, like looking at a dog. Shen Yu was angered by Shen Miao's gaze and started to scream even more. The official who was holding her impatiently gave her a kick and Shen Yu seemed to be in pain from the kick and was momentarily quiet. But she looked towards another direction with an extremely angry expression. Shen Miao followed her gaze and saw that not far from her, there was a familiar figure. It was a young lady, dressed in luxurious clothes, slightly drooping eyebrows, pointed chin and big eyes. If it wasn't Shen Dongling, who else could it be? Shen Dongling also saw Shen Miao and smiled gently and actually walked toward Shen Miao. When he was near, he bowed to Shen Miao and softly said, "Fifth younger sister." Then he looked at Shen Qiu and said, "Eldest brother." Shen Qiu nodded indifferently. Shen Miao however carefully sized up Shen Dongling. Shen Dongling was originally good-looking and had the same looks as Wan Yinyang, 3 points of delicateness and a few points of coquettishness. With such looks, there were actually very few that could be the main room. Most of them were concubines who had such appearances. When marrying a wife, one must choose a virtuous one, but when marrying a concubine, one must choose a charming one. In the past, Shen Dongling was always submissive in the Shen residence and was always patient and obedient. Her good looks were also wasted by that gray and loose clothes. Looking at it now, perhaps it was because she had taken good care of herself, her face was so tender that water could be squeezed out of it. Her gaze was also moist and moving. She wore bright clothes that accentuated her slender figure. She was a vivid and charming beauty. Looking at the entourage beside her, it seemed that Wang Bei treated her well. Otherwise he would not let a married female like her show her face in public so casually. Because Shen Dongling rarely left the courtyard in the Shen residence, not to mention going out, thus the surrounding commoners did not recognize her. Luo Tan looked at Shen Dongling with some curiosity. Shen Dongling looked at Shen Miao and said with a smile, "One did not think that one would be able to meet fifth younger sister here. It is really fate." Shen Miao smiled gently. Shen Dongling's attitude was very natural and there was no trace of sorrow in her expression. One heard that Wan Yinyang was also fetched out and was sold off by the Wang family. But Shen Gue who was on the stage was Shen Dongling's father and Shen Dongling did not have any trace of change in expression. When she was chatting with Shen Miao, it was as if she was watching a flower viewing banquet. Upon closer inspection, there was even some joy. "I am here to seek pleasure." Shen Miao looked at Shen Dongling, "What is third older sister here for?" When Shen Dongling heard it, she covered her mouth and smiled unhurriedly. It was completely different from the past. Now her every move was overflowing with charm, like the young Wan Yinyang, and there was no trace of timidity in the past. She said, "Fifth younger sister seeking pleasure, I dare not." Shen Dongling looked at the stage, only heard about the interesting matter in the Ding capital and came to have some fun and to be happy. Just as she finished speaking, one heard the executioner on the stage throwing down a sign and said, "The time has arrived." Execution. A few streaks of blood spurted out at the same time. Shen Dongling used a handkerchief to cover her mouth and widened her eyes with a look of pity as she softly said, "Really pitiful." "Yes." Shen Miao said calmly, "Really pitiful." Chapter 686. Yes. So pitiful. Both of their mouths were saying pitiful people but there was no trace of emotion on their faces. Shen Miao had a long hatred towards the first household of the Shen family and with the blood debt from the previous lifetime, it was not too much to do so. But Shen Dongling was different. Even though in the early years she and Wan Yinyang were suppressed by Ren Wanyun until they were transparent people in the Shen residence, Shen Dongling had never shown any trace of dissatisfaction and it was because of this that this kind of performance made one's heart turn cold. A few heads rolled down the stage into the crowd and there were cries of alarm from the crowd. The timid females had already covered their eyes and screamed. Because this family of Shen residents was a sinner, the corpses could not be collected and it had to be dealt with by the higher-ups. To deal with, it was more like burning it clean. Seeing the movements of the officials moving the corpses, Shen Dongling seemed to have lost interest and smiled at Shen Miao, originally in the residence, because my health was not good, I did not walk around with fifth younger sister. Now that I am married, it is even more inconvenient. But my heart is still thinking about fifth younger sister. If fifth younger sister is interested in another day, why not come over to the Wang residence for a visit? It will be good for us sisters to have some intimate words. Shinqiu was listening at the side and his brows wrinkled up. He could not say how much he liked Shen Dongling as a person, especially when something happened to Shen Wan's side. Even Shen Yu and Chen Roqiu were not spared, but the married Shen Dongling was safe and sound. Of course she was a Shu daughter and perhaps she did not need to be so calculative, but it seemed that the Wang family was dealing with her. A timid person, but let her husband's family who had just married her to run circles around her. Shinqiu was not a fool and felt that Shen Dongling was not as simple as she looked on the surface. Especially now that he saw that Shen Dongling was delicate and charming but had a cold temperament, he was even more displeased, not to mention to let Shen Miao get close to her. When Shen Miao heard it, she only smiled indifferently and asked back, looking at third older sister's appearance, young Master Wang treats third older sister very well. Shen Dongling lowered her head in embarrassment. The Wang family is kind. Shen Miao smiled coldly. The Wang family was kind. That might not be the case. Regardless of whether the Wang family was kind or not, Shen Dongling would not be that kind. She did not pay much attention to Shen Dongling in the past life, as under Ren Wanyan suppression, Shen Dongling would not dare to be a demon like this, but she had the same temperament as Fu Xiuyi and was good at hiding. One did not know that after Shen Miao's death, in the future battles, Shen Dongling would have the upper hand. Since that's the case, it's your fortune. Shen Miao said lightly, we still have some matters and will not disturb third older sister's enjoyment. Shen Dongling hurriedly bade farewell and said, take care, fifth sister. Shen Miao did not want to speak more with her and took the lead to take a step and leave. Shen Qiu had a faint expression as he nodded his head in farewell. Luo Tan and Luo Ling quickly followed. After Shen Miao and entourage left, Shen Dongling's personal maid, Xinghua, pouted her lips in indignation. Originally Xinghua also had a somewhat foolish temperament, but now that she followed Shen Dongling into the Wang family and became the head maid of the dowry, and her mistress was also the young mistress, she straightened her back a little and was not as cautious as before, and even a little arrogant. Xinghua grumbled, Fern treated fifth young lady in such a good manner, but fifth young lady did not appreciate it. It is really unreasonable. She is the D and I am a Shu, so naturally one would look down on one. Shen Dongling was not as angry as Xinghua. But you are now the young mistress of the Wang family, one cannot be like how it was in the past. Moreover, in the future when fifth young lady marries, one would not even have a sister and one would be a joke. One would not fawn over foreign but be so cold. One fear that one would not be able to beg in the future. Chapter 687. Shen Dongling smiled faintly. It is only a young mistress of the Wang family and is not worth mentioning in other people's eyes. Why is there a need to curry favor? Xinghua said unhappily, you are a proper official's foreign. Who would fifth young lady marry in the future? Could it be that she wants to marry a prince? Her reputation was already ruined a few years ago, so who would dare to marry from a good family? Xinghua. It seemed that she felt that the maid's words were too much and Shen Dongling frowned. Xinghua quickly kept quiet and did not dare to say more as her expression was still unjust. What is reputation? Shen Dongling said softly, with the backing of the Shen family army this big tree and the Luo family army this soil, even if you were to marry the current son of heaven, no one would be able to stop her. It's just that. Shen Dongling smiled meaningfully, it is not good to marry high up. At the other end, Luo Tan was pestering Shen Miao to ask, youngest Biao's sister, is that your Shu younger sister? From what I see, she is not as weak as what others say, like a transparent person. Previously when Luo Tan came to the Ding capital, she was afraid that she did not recognize the people in the Shen residence and specially inquired about the temperament of the masters of each household. Regarding Shen Dongling, there was the least information because this third young lady had such a transparent person's temperament and would not leave the courtyard all day and was very lowly. Luo Tan was still sighing in her heart. Because the younger generation of the Luo family were all mischievous, especially Luo Tan and Luo Qian, this pair of siblings, thus she really could not imagine Shen Dongling's life. Who knew that upon seeing today, it was not like what the servant said. Shen Dongling was completely different from what she imagined. Shen Miao smiled, people will always change. Luo Tan thought for a moment and agreed, that's right. Now that she is married, her husband's family likes her, that's why she is changed. She then sighed, it's really hard to be the same person as before. Shen Miao was somewhat amused by her attitude. Shen Qiu asked, younger sister, after watching the execution, can one return to the residence now? In the end, he still had lingering fears about Shen Miao being inexplicably kidnapped. Just as Shen Miao was about to answer, she suddenly heard a clear voice, older sister Shen. Shen Miao looked back. The person who came was a young master who looked like he was carved out of jade. He wore a pine green satin robe, and pine leaves were embroidered on the edges of his robe. It was very unique. This young master was about 11 or 12 years old, and could already be considered a young boy. His features were also very handsome, but for some reason, there was a hint of childishness to them. Even though one could only wear a crown when one was 20 years old, he still wore a small jade crown with 2 ribbons hanging beside his ears. At his waist was a gourd made of jade. White and tender, she was so cute that she looked like someone who had walked out of a painting. Luo Tan's eyes stared straight. All the children in the Shaochun city were all naughty monkeys, how could there be such cute and beautiful ones? Moreover, the decent actions made people's hearts melt. Even Luo Tan, who had no patience for children, was attracted to this young boy, let alone others. Luo Ling and Shen Qiu were somewhat surprised as this youth seemed to be rather familiar with Shen Miao. Shen Miao frowned and felt that there was some familiarity between the young boy's brows, but she could not think of who it was. That young boy originally thought that Shen Miao would quickly call out his name, but did not expect that Shen Miao would only look at him in a daze. Thus he walked over to Shen Miao's side. He was not as tall as Shen Miao and had to raise his head slightly, thus he stared at Shen Miao. Just when Shen Miao wanted to say something to break the silence, she heard a chuckle from the side, 5th Shen young lady, eldest Shen young master. The person who came was wearing a lake blue robe and the style of the clothes was exactly the same as the young boy in front, but this person was much older than the young boy. He had the appearance of a youth and his brows and eyes were similar to the young master. The brows were handsome and the smile was elegant. Shen Miao and Shen Qiu knew this person. It was Su Ming Feng from the residence of the Count of Pingnan. Chapter 688. Second younger brother is mischievous and not sensible. One hoped that he did not offend 5th young lady. Su Ming Feng smiled. Shen Miao almost bit off her own tongue. That little gentleman looked at her somewhat angrily and Shen Miao asked, Su Ming Lang? 2 years of not seeing each other and you do not recognize me? Su Ming Lang said angrily, did you not say that you would bring me a gift when you return? Shen Miao only felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. 2 years ago, Su Ming Lang was still a plump glutinous rice dumpling. He could not be considered handsome or beautiful. At most he was fair and tender like the one in front of her. But 2 years had passed. Who was this handsome young man in front of her now? Why did he lose so much weight? It was said that a female changes 18 times from womanhood, a male also changes 18 times from womanhood. Su Minglang was still sulking. Luo Tan at the side could not help but touch Su Minglang's head. Luo Tan liked good-looking things and was extremely curious to see such a good-looking little gentleman like Su Minglang. Now looking at Su Mingfeng, she was outspoken and said carelessly, "Worthy to be two brothers. Both are equally good-looking." Su Minglang's mind was on the matter of Shen Miao not recognizing him. It was Su Minglang who had never met such a straightforward female before. After being praised like this, he could not help but not know whether to laugh or cry. Shen Qiu and Luo Ling also quickly greeted the two brothers. Shen Miao looked at Su Minglang and smiled, "The gift is in my residence and will be sent over to you." Ever since she followed Shen Xian back to the Ding capital, there were all sorts of trivial matters and Su Minglang was really forgotten by her. She also did not see Su Minglang, and now that Su Minglang seemed to have changed into another person, she could not help but sigh with emotion. Perhaps a child's body was growing and would change every day. Thinking about Wan Yu and Fu Ming, she was still a little big when she left, and when she returned, she almost could not recognize them. Su Minglang was someone who did not hold a grudge, and when he heard that, his dissatisfaction was swept away. Su Minglang asked, "Is older Shen sister here to go shopping?" Su Mingfeng smiled awkwardly. He naturally knew that today was the day of the Shen family's execution. Originally the first household and second household of the Shen family were not on good terms. Not far from here was the execution ground, so it was assumed that Shen Miao was here to observe the ceremony. But these words could not be said to his second younger brother. Shen Miao said, casually strolling around. "Now it is time to return to the residence." Su Minglang obediently nodded his head, "Then remember to give me a present." Su Mingfeng gave him a slap on the back of his head, and Su Minglang covered his head and glared at him. She then turned her head to look at Shen Miao and was about to bid farewell to Shen Miao when her eyes suddenly froze and pointed to the bracelet on Shen Miao's wrist. "Shen, older sister, this jade bracelet of yours looks like the tiger head bracelet that older brother Xia made." Everyone was taken aback by his words. Shen Qiu and Luo Ling did not know about the tiger head bracelet, and Luo Tan was somewhat curious, but Shen Miao had a guilty conscience. Su Minglang said it naively but saw Su Mingfeng frowning. On that snow-white wrist, there was indeed a jade bracelet. The quality of the jade was very good, its entire body was emerald green, like a spiritual plant that grew deep in the mountains. However, there wasn't just one jade bracelet. It was actually split into two at the head, like a pair of double bracelets. There were no traces of carving on it, and it was natural. There was only a small tiger head carved on the protruding part of the head. Even though Shen Miao felt that it was like a cat. That was one of the jewelry pieces that Xie Jingxing had sent over. Shen Miao originally felt that those jewelry were either rich or expensive, and each had their own strong points. If it was possible, it would be good to wear all of them. Who knew that when Guyut saw it, she said, "Young lady cannot wear all of these on the body. These jewelry are too expensive. It needs to be matched with gorgeous clothes. If it is simple, it would appear nondescript." Chapter 689. Shen Miao was discouraged. Xie Jingxing did not lack money, but after gifting so many expensive-looking jewelry, could it be that she had to specially buy a batch of gorgeous clothes for these jewelry? Even if she bought it, she would find it cumbersome to wear. After thinking about it, he felt that this jade bracelet was the simplest. There were needles hidden inside, so it looked relatively simple. Even so, Luo Shuayan still praised the water quality. It could only be said that Xie Jingxing's gift was the same as him, not knowing how to be low-key. While she was slightly distracted, Su Mingfeng's expression became solemn, and before Shen Miao could react, he held Shen Miao's hands and said, "One have offended." Shen Miao subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand, but Su Mingfeng held it very tightly. Moreover, he did not directly hold Shen Miao's wrist, and there was a layer of sleeve separating it, making the posture very strange. Shen Qiu and Luo Ling's eyes turned cold at the same time. Shen Qiu said, "Gentleman Su, you are too impetuous." Su Minglang's eyes widened. This was probably the first time he heard someone say that his big brother was rash. But Su Mingfeng quickly released his hands and cupped his hands towards Shen Miao. Just now this one was rude. Apologies. After all, he did not do anything, so Shen Miao would not mind about these. She just did not know what Su Mingfeng had discovered. In the next moment, she heard Su Mingfeng asking, "One dare to ask, fifth young lady, where did this tiger head bracelet come from?" Shen Miao's heart thumped, and Luo Tan and the rest were already dumbfounded. Su Mingfeng was a dignified male. Why would he ask where did the accessories on a female's hands came from? Even Su Minglang's gaze towards Su Mingfeng was somewhat strange. Su Mingfeng was unmoved and still looked at Shen Miao seriously, as if he was very insistent on waiting for Shen Miao's answer. Shen Miao regained her senses and smiled. "I bought it from a traveling merchant who came from afar. He said that it was an imported product. I did not expect Master Su to recognize it. Is this bracelet called the tiger head bracelet?" Su Mingfeng's expression was somewhat disappointed for a moment, but in a moment he picked himself up and said, "Correct. It is called tiger head hoop. Is fifth miss willing to part with this tiger head bracelet and sell it to me?" Cough, cough. Luo Tan choked on her own saliva. The people in the Ding capital were so strange that the handsome youth in front of them actually liked to buy female jewelry. It was said that some rich families had some strange hobbies. For example, some people liked to collect women's undergarments, and some people liked to put on women's rouge. It seemed that young Master Su liked women's jewelry. "Su Minglang, eldest brother, do you want to buy this tiger head bracelet for a young lady?" Upon hearing this, Shen Qiu and Luo Ling instantly understood, and Luo Tan was also surprised. So it was not that she liked it but wanted to buy it for her beloved young lady. As Shen Miao's thoughts turned, she smiled slightly and said, "This is after all my personal jewelry. No matter if it is bought, sold, or gifted, it would not be appropriate for it to be in the hands of an outsider. If you, one, you, I, you, I, one, Ling, Chen Su, I, of Ling of Chen of, I, that, I, and I. Shen, that she, Shen had she, and said, even to, if I give my own jewelry to an outsider, what would others think? No way. Shen Qiu also nodded his head, correct. This matter concerned his younger sister's reputation, not a single jewelry could go wrong. Su Mingfeng could only smile awkwardly. Since that is the case, then one can only regret. After saying a few more polite words, Su Mingfeng brought Su Minglang to bid farewell to Shen Miao and entourage. Just as they were about to leave, Su Mingfeng suddenly thought of something and looked at Shen Miao. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "Has fifth young lady seen the little Marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage, the Xie family?" Chapter 690. Shen Miao was startled, and the few people around her were also startled. Everyone knew that Xie Jingxing had been dead for 2 years. Was this Su Mingfeng crazy? Shen Miao laughed in spite of herself. How can I see that the little Marquis of the Xie family died young? Does young Master Su have some prejudice against me and is sincerely cursing me? Su Mingfeng no longer said anything, and this time he really brought Su Minglang far away. When the crowd could no longer see both of their figures, Luo Tan then touched her shoulders and said, have goosebumps all over. Youngest Biao's sister, why would that person ask you if you have seen a dead person without rhyme or reason? Shen Miao said, he must be possessed. I think so too. Luo Tan deeply agreed. Shen Qiu frowned, less contact with the Su family in the future. What did he say that Shen Miao had seen a dead person, and where did she see it? Why did he want to see it? For no rhyme or reason, one would get a body full of bad luck. But why did he ask you? Luo Tan asked curiously, could it be that youngest Biao's sister and that little Marquise Xia have any friendship? Absolutely no connection and do not have any contact. Shen Miao answered with 8 words. Luo Ling looked at her in surprise. What Shen Miao did not know was that on this day, Su Mingfeng, who saw the tiger head bracelet on her wrist, was restless the entire day. Even Su Yu also sensed that something was wrong with Su Mingfeng and even asked him what was wrong. Now the Count of Ping Nan's Su family had tried their best to keep a low profile, and everyone knew that the court was in a turbulent situation and one should not get involved in the muddy waters. Now the Su family was used to such carefree days, and Su Mingfeng did not enter officialdom, so who was he showing a straight face to? When Su Mingfeng ate, he only vaguely said a few words and hastily took 2 bites before returning to his room. Su Yu and Su Furen looked at each other in dismay. Su Furen asked, what is wrong with him? Su Yu shook his head. Su Furen simply asked her youngest son, Su Ming Lang, who did you meet with when you went out with your eldest brother today? Su Ming Lang said heartlessly as he picked up the food, one met with older sister Xin. Older brother asked older sister Xin for jewelry, but older sister Xin did not give. Older sister Xin said that it was against the rules and older brother was not happy. Madam Su and Su Yu gasped. Su Ming Lang's words were without rhyme or reason, but in their ears, it was that Su Mingfeng was close to the young lady of the Shen family, and the young lady of the Shen family felt that her reputation was damaged, and Su Mingfeng was angry. Su Furen put down her chopsticks and asked, let me ask you, the older sister of the Shen family that you mentioned, is it the 5th young lady of the Shen family? Now that the 2nd and 3rd household of the Shen family were executed, naturally it would not be Shen Yu. Shen Qing had died 2 years ago. Shen Dongling had exchanged marriage to the Wang family, and the unmarried Shen family's older sister was Shen Miao. Forgive Su Furen for thinking of the formidable great general Shen family first, since the Shen family was the most famous in the Ding capital. Su Ming Lang nodded his head hard. This time, Su Yu could no longer sit still. He pointed at Su Ming Lang with a trembling finger and said, your big brother is asking for jewelry. Su Ming Lang's head nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. The couple looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. Logically speaking, Su Mingfeng would be 23 soon after the new year, and normal people would have already gotten married and would have a son earlier. But one did not know what was wrong with their own family's head that he was not willing to marry. In the early years, there was Xia Jingxing from the residence of the Marquis of Lin and who followed Su Mingfeng. Su Yu was not worried at all, as he knew that Xia Jingxing was someone who amused young ladies, and it would not be wrong to follow this Xia Jingxing. Once Xia Jingxing died, his own son could directly become a monk. In these 2 years, he did not see anyone who was interested in any young lady. No matter if one had high standards or not, if this carried on, the Su family's husband and wife would suspect that Su Mingfeng was gay. Chapter 691. Now hearing Su Ming Lang say that, both husband and wife were half gratified and half in a difficult position. She was gratified that Su Mingfeng was still a normal male unlike females. The difficult thing was that Su Mingfeng took a fancy to any family's young lady, but it was Shen Xian's daughter. Shen Xian held great power in his hands, and by marrying Shen Xian, if one day Emperor Hui was prepared to deal with Shen Xian, the Su family would also be unlucky. Could it be that he had managed to escape from one pit of fire with great difficulty, but now he was going to jump into another pit of fire? Just thinking about it gave him a headache. It was still Su Furen who was considerate and said, "Don't be anxious, Ming Lang's words are unclear. If Ming Feng really liked the young lady of the Shen family, he would definitely express it. Jin Feng, go and call all the servants in eldest young master's courtyard. I have something to ask them." In the room, Su Ming Feng was pacing back and forth. He was not mistaken. Even if it was only for a short period of time, it was enough for him to see and feel clearly. The jade bracelet on Shen Miao's wrist was obviously the tiger head bracelet. There were a total of 2 tiger head bracelets. One was in the hands of Princess Rong Axian and the other appeared on Shen Miao's wrist. Su Ming Feng had always thought that the second one would not appear because Xie Jingxing was dead. Under the heavens, only Xie Jingxing knew how to make tiger head bracelets. At that time, Su Ming Feng and Xie Jingxing were still miserably green youths who walked around Mahjong Tai. One day, she saw Xie Jingxing holding something that looked like a bracelet and rubbed it, and even ridiculed him. In fact, he was very curious in his heart. Su Ming Feng understood Xie Jingxing. Even though Xie Jingxing was handsome and beautiful and frivolous, he had no interest in these gorgeous ornaments, not to mention female items. Under his curiosity, Su Ming Feng asked and Xie Jingxing rolled his eyes at him and only said that it was a concealed weapon. Afterwards Su Ming Feng pestered Xie Jingxing until he was impatient, so Xie Jingxing showed him that the bracelet was made into 2 bracelets that were connected together. There were hidden weapons inside and there were poisonous needles that could be used for self-defense. Su Ming Feng felt that it was very interesting and wanted it. Xie Jingxing despised, "This is for females to use. Who are you wearing this bracelet for?" Su Ming Feng then quieted down. Afterwards one saw Xie Jingxing giving the bracelet to Princess Rong Axian. Ever since the death of Princess Yuqing, Princess Rong Axian doted on Xie Jingxing very much and Xie Jingxing had a deep relationship with her, so it was understandable for him to be gifted to Princess Rong Axian. Why was it called the tiger head hoop? It was because Xie Jingxing carved a tiger's head on it that his carving skills were not flattering as it was as ugly as a dog's. Su Ming Feng kept on ridiculing but Princess Rong Axian liked it very much. Xie Jingxing became interested and said that he wanted to carve another one. However, that jade material was very difficult to find, so he had not been able to find it. It was until 2 years ago when Su Ming Feng found a piece from the hands of a wealthy merchant, but the jade material was not as good as the previous one. There were shallow white marks, but one could still see it if one looked at it seriously. Before Xie Jingxing set off, he took that piece of jade and said that if he was bored along the way, he would make a tiger head bracelet. Who knew that once he left, he would be separated forever? As for the tiger head bracelet on Shen Miao's hand, there were faint white marks on the jadeite material under the sunlight. It was the same mechanism, the same workmanship, and that ugly carving was exactly the same as Xie Jingxing's. Xie Jingxing left the capital 2 years ago and Shen Axian went to the northwest region 2 years ago. Shen Axian left first and Xie Jingxing left after that, and when Xie Jingxing left, he still had that piece of jade material. Could it be that Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing had met each other in these 2 years? But at that time Xie Jingxing was already dead. Moreover, the carving on the bracelet was not old and seemed to be polished not long ago, as it was not smooth enough. Su Ming Feng's heart was thumping and he raised his hand to summon his servant, call a few people to guard at the entrance of Shen Xian's residence and observe the movements of the 5th Shen young lady. It is also good to bribe the servants in the Shen mansion. I want to know every move of the 5th Shen young lady. Su Ming Feng naturally did not know how much of a shock his words would cause to Master Su and Su Furen's ears. Heavens! Su Yu said, Ming Feng really has deep feelings for this female. I originally thought that no matter how one looked at Ming Feng, he would not do such a rash action like snatching others' jewelry. One thought that it was Ming Lang speaking nonsense and did not think that it was true. Su Furen's head hurt and she drank a mouthful of tea before saying, "How is it that he was so reserved previously but now it is like a different person? Still bribing others' informants. This is not the way to chase a young lady. What is the difference between him and those brats outside who cannot be seen in public? Perhaps it is because of his good feelings." Su Yu somewhat sighed. "This child is like me, long affections." Su Furen rolled her eyes at him. According to this, if one does not let Ming Feng marry, would Ming Feng not die of disgust? One must first send an invitation to the Shen residence. Send an invitation for what? Su Yu was puzzled. What else can it be? To find a wife for your son. Su Furen's words were shocking. Chapter 692. The wind blew in the night and it was unusually cold. In the residence of Prince Rui, Gao Yang was reading a letter that was delivered with relish. Shen Miao lived in the Shen mansion, and even though there were many soldiers in the Shen family and the guards were not weak, due to various reasons, there were still dangers lurking around and one did not dare to relax. Xie Jingxing transferred a secret guard from the MOU army to quietly follow Shen Miao, so as to avoid any accidents. This secret guard called Song Yang was originally a spy in the MOU army. His skills were top-notch and his information gathering was also top-notch. It was just that he had a problem, which was that he was a chatterbox. Every day he would report to Xie Jingxing what Shen Miao did, and in this letter it was written who Shen Miao saw today and what she said. Basically, other than going to the toilet and bathing, everything else was written in detail. Gao Yang felt that this was quite abnormal, but Song Yang was such a cautious person. When he saw that Shen Miao and entourage met Su Ming Feng on the streets in the afternoon, his expression changed. Even though he did not know what Su Ming Feng had discovered, but Su Ming Feng and Xie Jingxing had such a long friendship and this kind of strange action was not good. Just as he was thinking about it, Jiu Shu passed by from the back while biting an apple. When he saw Gao Yang in a daze with a piece of paper, he took a glance, but the main point was skewed. He said, "Ah. So that Biao young lady of the Shen family likes Su Ming Feng." Gao Yang was so shocked by Gao Yang that he almost fell off the stone bench. When he recovered to his senses, he said angrily, "What is the fuss for? You are too timid." Ji Yushu patted his shoulder. "Don't use your fan all day long. Practicing martial arts is the right way." Finishing, he returned to the original topic. Young Lady Luo and young Master Su are quite compatible and third older brother has a relationship with both sides. Why not be a matchmaker on another day? Gao Yang frowned. "Which eyes of yours saw that they are compatible? Moreover, who said that Luo Tan likes Su Ming Feng?" "Both my eyes saw that they are compatible," Ji Yushu said and pointed to a line of words on the letter to Gao Yang. "You see, young Lady Luo said to Su Ming Feng, worthy of being two brothers, both are equally good-looking." Let's not talk about Su Ming Lang, but young Lady Luo was using this method to express goodwill to Su Ming Feng. Otherwise, why would you praise someone for being good-looking? Luckily, Song Yang was a chatterbox, and not only did he write Shen Miao's words, he also included Luo Tan's words. Ji Yushu was considered to be a talent as he was able to see this sentence in such a full page of paper. Gao Yang suppressed the slight displeasure in his heart and said, "Boring. You don't understand." Ji Yushu snatched the fan from Gao Yang's hands and imitated Gao Yang's unfathomable manner as he waved it and said with an "I am the smartest of look, only this young master who has seen all kinds of flowers can see the true heart of a young female. What do you know? If you fawn on me, I can consider teaching you." Achoo! In the cold winter, Feng Ji Yushu sneezed as he was fanning himself. Gao Yang snatched the fan back and ignored him. Just as they were talking, Xie Jingxing came back from outside, followed by Tai Yi and Nan Qi. It was unknown where they came from, but they looked travel-worn. Third older brother. Ji Yushu greeted him warmly, but Xie Jingxing did not even look at him and walked into the room with a cold face. Nan Qi and Tai Yi also had a solemn expression. Ji Yushu did not notice that Xie Jingxing was in a bad mood and continued, "Third older brother, something happened to fifth Shen young lady." Xie Jingxing's footsteps paused and frowned as he looked at him. Gao Yang also looked at Ji Yushu. Ji Yushu cleared his throat and said seriously, "Just looked at the news that Song Yang sent back for you. Today, when fifth Shen young lady went out, she met with a lecher and that lecher touched fifth Shen young lady's little hand." Chapter 693. Gao Yang face-bombed and heard Ji Yushu asking again, "Does third older brother know who is this audacious lecher?" Naturally, no one responded to him, causing Nan Qi and Tai Yi to be extremely nervous. Fifth Shen young lady was the person that their master fancied, so who had the guts to actually touch fifth Shen young lady's hand? Ji Yushu said heartbreakingly, "It is Su Mingfeng." It was third older brother's sworn brother, Su Mingfeng. We're all brothers, yet he actually tried to steal third brother's woman. How heartless, unjust, and shameless. Nan Qi and Tai Yi were stunned. Xie Jingxing's eyes were cold and Gao Yang simply used his fan to cover his face. He did not want to see Ji Yushu's demonic behavior in front of so many people. The lamp was as small as a bean and Shen Miao was bored to death reading under the lamp. From time to time she would raise her eyes to look at the windows. In the cold weather, the windows were wide open. Shen Miao guessed that Xie Jingxing had planted people in the Shen mansion, but she did not care. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan usually did not work in the residence, much less Shen Qiu. There were no secrets in the Shen mansion, so it would not matter if Xie Jingxing's people came. Moreover, there was an additional person to guard the door, so one could just treat it as a free guard. Since Xie Jingxing's people were paying attention to every move at this end, the action of opening the window should be reported to his master that she had something to wait for. Xie Jingxing Shen Miao thought left and right and felt that it was not a good thing to meet Su Mingfeng on the streets today. Su Mingfeng and Xie Jingxing's relationship was very good. One had to know that when Su Mingfeng died, only Xie Jingxing dared to collect his corpse and was not afraid of the wrath of the imperial family of Mingqi, thus one knew that both of them were best friends. Since they were best friends, they understood each other. Today Su Mingfeng noticed her bracelet and said that it was a tiger head bracelet. It was definitely not something that was said casually and definitely had some relation with Xie Jingxing. Shen Miao also did not know how many people in Mingqi knew about Xie Jingxing's identity. But seeing Su Mingfeng's performance today, Su Mingfeng did not know about it. If Su Mingfeng knew that Xie Jingxing did not die, one did not know if there would be trouble in the future. As he was lost in his thoughts, he heard a sound from the window. He looked up and saw that the purple-robed young man had already entered the room with ease. He even closed the window to prevent the wind from blowing in. Xie Jingxing strode over and sat in front of the table. The tea on the table was still warm and not cold. Xie Jingxing poured himself a cup of tea. It was so familiar that it was as if he was in his own house. Shen Miao ignored the strange feeling in her heart and also drank a mouthful of tea before saying, "Today I am looking for you because of a matter." "What is it?" Xie Jingxing curled his lips and asked. After hesitating for a moment, Shen Miao then said, "Su Mingfeng might have sensed that you are still alive." Xie Jingxing was silent. Shen Miao stretched out her wrist and the jade bracelet on her wrist was lustrous and translucent, making her wrist look even more slender and fair. She said, "Today Su Mingfeng saw this bracelet on my hand on the streets and said something about tiger head bracelet and asked if I have seen you before. I think that there should be some origin. Perhaps he also guessed that you are still alive." Xie Jingxing frowned slightly. He was originally born well, but his usual smile that was not a smile made one feel intoxicated. At this moment when he did not speak, one would feel a cold feeling hitting one's face. Shen Miao thought that Xie Jingxing was now a great Liang person, and with the identity of Prince Rui, he had to wear a silver mask so that others would not discover his true identity. Who knew that her negligence would be detected by Su Mingfeng? Even if Su Mingfeng was Xie Jingxing's good friend, it was inevitable that he would be used by others. If it brought trouble to Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing had helped her so much and she would be giving trouble to Xie Jingxing. Shen Miao's heart felt a little guilty. She deliberated, why not? Think of a way to remedy it. Chapter 694. Impossible. Xie Jingxing flatly rejected her proposal. Su Mingfeng and I have known each other for many years and his character is cunning and intelligent. It cannot be hidden. Shen Miao had a headache, but her heart was somewhat blaming Xie Jingxing. Since this tiger head bracelet had such a history, then one should not casually give it to others, all right? Unfortunately she was wearing that tiger head bracelet today, thus Su Mingfeng happened to see it. Then what should be done? Even if Shen Miao was intelligent, she did not know what to do. Everyone had their own specialties. She didn't know how to conceal her identity. Xie Jingxing shook his head, so be it if discovered. No need to bother about it. Will this not bring you trouble? Shen Miao frowned and asked, the Su family is after all an official family of Ming Qi and you are a great Liang person. Perhaps he would think that you are a spy sent by the enemy country. There will be endless troubles. It was not that Shen Miao thought badly of others, but it was like this. For a little benefit, the sisters in the inner palace would kill each other, not to mention that this was related to the interests of the two countries. The friendship between friends was the most precious, thus it could not tolerate deception and was the most fragile. Xie Jingxing slowly looked at her and his lips suddenly curled up as he said, "Are you worried about me?" Shen Miao was surprised for a moment before saying, "I am concerned about myself." She paused before adding another sentence, "I am now on the same boat as you. If you were to be discovered, it is difficult to guarantee that I would not be dragged out and the Shen family would also be dragged down. The gains do not make up for the losses." Xie Jingxing found it somewhat funny, "Do not worry. One will not lose out by being allies with this prince." Shen Miao was used to his arrogance and did not put his words to heart. It was just that she suddenly thought of something and said, "Speaking of which, you really do not intend to stop Su Mingfeng. How long do you think I need to wear my mask?" Xie Jingxing suddenly asked. Shen Miao did not understand his meaning and did not speak. "Sooner or later my identity will be known." Xie Jingxing lightly said, "If it is not Su Mingfeng, it would be others." Shen Miao was shocked and somewhat puzzled before asking, "Then have you ever thought that if your identity was known, your loved ones would think?" The Marquis of Linan, Princess Rong Xan, Su Mingfeng and the others. Even if others knew about it, they would at most be surprised. But how would Xie Jingxing's close family and friends think? Xie Jingxing would face the doubts of his closest family, which even Shen Miao did not dare to imagine. Even if she was betrayed and hurt in her previous life, she was still on the same side as the Shen family. But after Xie Jingxing's identity was revealed, that he was Prince Rui of the Great Liang, the situation became much more complicated. Xie Jingxing smiled casually, "So what if I know?" He said, "There is no harm in the world hating me." He looked at Shen Miao and there was some evilness in his smile, "I am not afraid." But one did not know why. Shen Miao felt somewhat sad when she saw his smile. She felt that this handsome and beautiful young man was not as heartless as he looked. Shen Miao was still thinking about it when Xie Jingxing suddenly touched her head and said, "Do not take off the bracelet. Since it is given to you, one is not afraid of others recognizing it." Shen Miao actually did not like people touching her head. What would it look like if the empress of a country was touched by others? Even if Shen Qiu touched her head, Shen Miao would also be unhappy, but today she allowed Xie Jingxing to do it for the first time. She sighed in her heart. Today there was no need to haggle so much. Xie Jingxing stood up, "Thought that you came over because of an urgent matter. If there is nothing, I will leave first." He said, "In the future if there is any problem, just call Song Yang. He is now your secret guard, so there is no need to open the window and wait for me. I will wake you up when I reach." He said it naturally and Shen Miao did not feel that there was anything wrong. It was until Xie Jingxing left that Shen Miao felt that these words were too ambiguous. Chapter 695. She thought of Xie Jingxing's words and tried to softly call out, "Song Yang." In a blink of an eye, there was a young man dressed in black like a guard in front of her. Shen Miao had a headache. Did Xie Jingxing stuff someone into her boudoir? In the future she would be watched even when she was sleeping. She asked, "You stay in the room all day?" Song Yang said, "This subordinate lives on the tree at the entrance, and when young Furen call this subordinate's name, this subordinate is a person who practices martial arts and would be able to hear it softly." Shen Miao looked at him in surprise. "What did you call me?" Song Yang bowed to her, "Young Furen." Shen Miao said, "Do not call me young Furen." "Yes, young Furen." Shen Miao. After a long while, she waved her hands and said helplessly, "Never mind. Let me ask you, what did Xie Jingxing go to do?" Xie Jingxing left in a hurry and it seemed that he had something important to do. Shen Miao felt uneasy because of the matter in the day and thought that Xie Jingxing went to find Su Mingfeng to silence him. Song Yang said, "This subordinate do not know." Shen Miao took a deep breath. Xie Jingxing did not send a secret guard but sent someone to monitor her. She sized up this person called Song Yang. He looked young and strong. Tomorrow he would follow the little kitchen to chop firewood. Xie Jingxing left the Shen mansion and instructed Tai Yi, "In the future let Ji Yushu stay further away from Song Yang." Ji Yushu had the temperament of wishing for the world to be in chaos and felt that the days were too leisurely. To create trouble for him at this critical juncture, he really wanted to kick him back to the Great Liang. Tai Yi complied and suddenly thought of something. "Master, the traveling Great Master Guanzhen has arrived at Putua Monastery. Previously His Majesty let you go take a look. Now that he is in Mingqi, when do you plan to leave?" Xie Jingxing thought for a moment and said, "Tomorrow." The next day, the weather was extremely good. Luo Tan had recently fallen in love with cutting window flowers and thinking that it was the end of the year, she could cut some festive patterns to paste on the windows. She carried a large stack of red paper and scissors over and wanted to cut the window flowers with Shen Miao. As Shen Miao was cutting, she remembered some things. In her previous life in the state of Qin, those princesses and princes deliberately made fun of her, making her cut window decorations and do needlework. She had to cut and embroider day and night. Not only did she have poor eyesight, her vision became blurry at night, and her hands also developed a thick layer of calluses, making them very rough. Later when she returned to the palace, even if Shuang Jiang brought a stone to help her grind, she was still unable to grind off the calluses. Coincidentally it was Fu Xiuyi's birthday and all the beauties in the inner palace wanted to send birthday gifts to coax the emperor to be happy. Mei Furen's song lingered for 3 days and the way her slender jade fingers fluttered made everyone stare blankly. When it was her turn, Shen Miao presented an embroidered painting of mountains and rivers. She was the Empress and it was not dignified to sing and dance. That mountain-river diagram was very imposing and Fu Xiaoyi obviously liked it very much and the officials also praised it. Mei Furan did not let it go and insisted that Shen Miao also play a Kong Ho. Shen Miao was unwilling and looked at Fu Xiaoyi with some pleading eyes. Fu Xiaoyi downplayed it, since Mayor is interested, then the Empress can play a song for Zhen. Zhen had not heard you play the zither for many years. Shen Miao was forced to play helplessly and could only play. Shen Miao knew how to play the Kong Ho. She actually learned a lot of things for Fu Xiaoyi and even though it was not as moving as Mei Furan's zither, she was still able to listen to it. But it still provoked criticism from the officials, ridicule from the concubines and everyone pointed at it. Why? It was because that pair of hands that were used to play the Kong Ho was too ugly. The joints were thick due to working all year round and one could see thick scissors between the fingers. The entire hand was clumsy and rough, not like the hands of the Empress of a country, but more like the hands of a peasant woman in the countryside. Chapter 696. Compared to that pair of delicate white and beautiful jade hands, it formed a sharp contrast. She was very afraid. Not afraid that she would make a fool of herself, but afraid that because of her, Wan Yu and Fu Ming would be pointed at. When she was playing the Chinese harp, she saw Mei Furan smiling charmingly at her and seeing Fu Xiaoyi's cold and harsh expression, her heart was so sad that she wanted to cry. It was just that Shen Miao could not cry. For Wan Yu and Fu Ming, she wanted to be a dignified and indifferent empress. She pretended that she did not care about anything but when she returned to Kuanning Palace, she let Shuang Jiang bring double the grindstone and grind off a layer of skin on her hands. Luo Tan saw that Shen Miao was lost in thought and asked, "Youngest Biao's sister?" Shen Miao recovered to her senses and saw that the picture of a magpie in spring had been cut off. She could not help but smile bitterly. Now that she had a second life, her hands were still tender and flawless, but it seemed that the calluses were still there, constantly reminding her of her embarrassing past. Shen Miao threw the scissors away and said, "Not cutting anymore." Luo Tan made an "ah" sound and asked, "Why?" Shen Miao casually said, "Calluses will grow." Luo Tan, who had always worshipped Shen Miao, could not help but have a strange expression. "It is not like cutting day and night, how would calluses grow?" She then said, "No wonder your little name is Jiao Jiao." Shen Miao picked up the teacup and took a sip when she saw Guyu walking in from outside. "Young lady, Fern wants you to go to the main hall." Luo Shuaiyan did not have any official duties today and was in the residence. Shen Miao asked, "What matter does mother call me for?" Guyu hesitated for a moment before saying, "This servant also do not know, but Su family's Furan came to our residence and is currently talking to Furan in the main hall." Su family. Shen Miao's hands paused and put down the teacup, the Count of Pingnan's Su family. Exactly. In the main hall, Luo Shuaiyan was talking to Su Furan. Su Furan did not come empty-handed today as she said that her master had obtained 2 snow sparrows and these snow sparrows could only be found in the northern country. Su Furan was afraid that they would spoil it and knew that Luo Shuaiyan was from the northwestern region, so she specially came to ask how the snow sparrows could be raised. Luo Shuaiyan previously thought that Su Furan was here to laugh at her, but upon seeing Su Furan's sincere expression, she did not have any intention of teasing. He also carried 2 baskets of fresh fruits from the countryside, which were fresh and tender. Previously the residents of the formidable great general and the residents of the Marquis of Lin were enemies and the Su family was on good terms with the residents of the Marquis of Lin and naturally the Shin and Su family were strangers and did not care about each other. 2 years ago, the matter, Shin of the matter of the resistance. The Shin family was of the Shin and Shin. Even though at the end it was self-defeating and made Emperor Wen Hui relax his vigilance, but Luo Shuiyan remembered this in her heart. There. And there, Luo, and one of Shin of Luo of. One of one. Luo. It was just that her heart was somewhat puzzled. This Su Furen said that she came to ask how to raise the snow sparrows, but after talking for half a day, she did not mention about the snow sparrows at all. She only pestered Luo Shuiyan to talk about the new and interesting things in the Shaochun city and repeatedly praised Luo Shuiyan for teaching her children well and for giving birth to a pair of good children. The praises made Luo Shuiyan somewhat red. After praising for so long, Luo Shuiyan thought that it was time to let Shen Miao come out to meet the guests and let someone call Shen Miao over. But her heart was suspicious. Could it be that the residence of the Marquis of Lin and was about to fall and the Su family wanted to find a backer for themselves, so they wanted to curry favor with the Shen family? If that was the case, then the Su family really could not be associated. Thinking of this, Luo Shuiyan felt that her decision to call Shen Miao over was somewhat impulsive. Especially when she saw Su Furen looking at the door expectantly, she felt even more depressed. It was just that the words that were said were like the water that was poured out, so it was not good to refute. Chapter 697. Until the maid outside came over to report that young lady had come over. Su Furen immediately sat up straight and looked towards the door with some excitement. One saw a tall young lady wearing a light yellow dress walking in. She was quite handsome with some heroic spirit in her brows and wheat-colored skin. She was also hopping when she walked and her hair was combed into a deer bun. She only had 2 pearl earrings and there was a red dagger at her waist. Su Furen. She did not think that Su Mingfeng would like such a female. One look and one could tell that she was lively and unruly. When that young lady saw Luo Shuiyan, she laughed. Youngest Gu. Youngest Gu. Su Furen was surprised for a moment before she saw clearly that there was another young lady behind this young lady. This person was wearing a lilac pleated skirt with pleated begonia, a small white coat, and a snow-white cloak over her head. Her skin was as white as a peeled egg, her eyes were round and bright, her nose and mouth were small and her brows were delicate, making her look very lovable. But there was a strange posture that suppressed all the tenderness and naivety. She walked in a dignified and steady manner, looking like a person that came out from the palace. When Su Furen just married Su Yu, she had seen the Empress before when the bride met the Empress Dowager. She felt that this petite young lady had the exact same posture as the Empress and was even more arrogant than the Empress. The one who walked over was a proud and cold noble lady with her chin up, and every move had the air of nobility that only a purple marquis would have. That young lady called Luo Shuiyan mother before looking at Su Furen. Luo Shuiyan quickly said, "This is the Furen of the Count of Pingnan's Su family. This is my daughter and niece, Tanner." Shen Miao and Luo Tan bowed to Su Furen. Su Furen did not go to the palace banquet previously and only heard of Shen Miao going against Princess Ming'an at the banquet. She knew that Shen Miao was not a docile person, thus when she heard Su Ming Lang say that Su Mingfeng was interested in Shen Miao, she was somewhat worried. But she had to come and take a look, thus she thickened her face and sent the invitation. After all, it was her son's lifelong event. Thinking that Luo Tan was definitely an unruly female hero, one subconsciously thought that Luo Tan was Shen Miao. One did not think that after seeing the real person, one then felt that it was the complete opposite of the truth. She smiled as she took out 2 pouches from her sleeves and stuffed it into Shen Miao's and Luo Tan's hands. Shen Furen really know how to raise people. This biological daughter and biological niece are both better looking than the other. Just now when I walked over, I was still wondering where this immortal daughter came from. Shen Furen is really blessed. Luo Tan and Shen Miao looked at the pouch in their hands and were somewhat at a loss. It was not the new year, so why would they give a pouch? It was still alright if they were familiar with each other, but Shen Miao knew that the Su family and the Shen family did not have any relation. Could it be that the matter with Su Mingfeng yesterday was exposed? But even if it was exposed, what did it have to do with Su Furen coming to the Shen residence? Luo Shuayan also looked at the pouch and was somewhat stiff. Just as she was about to open her mouth to decline, Su Furen held her hands down and said, "If you were to decline, I would be angry. I saw that these two young ladies are beautiful and well-mannered, thus my heart likes them very much. It is just a little greeting gift." Everyone said that Shen Furen is forthright, so why be so stingy? She sighed again, "It would be good if I had 2 daughters." Luo Shuayan was really confused by Su Furen today and could only go along with her words. "What are you saying? Furen have 2 sons in the residence and they are also very outstanding." "How are they outstanding?" Su Furen shook her head. "Ming Lang is very stubborn and mischievous. Every day he does not think of making progress and only know how to follow his father to mess around. I heard that your Chioer was very sensible at a young age and my heart is very envious. Isn't there still Mingfeng?" Luo Shuayan smiled. "The eldest young master in the residence is a young talent." Su Furen's heart was delighted and looked toward Shen Miao and Luo Tan. "2 young ladies, we are chatting about some boring things and you would find it annoying to listen. Go and play on your own. I will speak to Furen." This was a tactful way of sending them away. Shen Miao's heart became more vigilant. Su Furen would send her away upon the mention of Su Mingfeng. Could it be that she had guessed wrongly and Su Furen was really here because of yesterday's matter? Luo Tan and Shen Miao walked outside and Shen Miao borrowed the opportunity to turn her back and said softly, "Zhong Yang, go to the main hall and listen to what they are talking about." She knew that no matter how soft her voice was, Zhong Yang would be able to hear it. When Luo Tan saw it, she asked, "Biao youngest sister, what are you muttering to yourself?" In the main hall, Su Furen covered her heart and looked at Luo Shuayan with melancholy. Not to hide from Furen, Mingfeng is indeed not bad. For so many years, he did not let his father and I worry about him. He is born with a talented appearance and high in learning. He entered the officialdom at a young age and is filial and well-mannered. One would not be able to find a second person like him in the entire Ding capital. Luo Shuayan had a smile on her face but her heart was muttering. Just now she said that Shen Qiu was good and now she said that her own son was the best in the Ding capital. How would one boast like this? Just as she was thinking, she heard Su Furen exaggeratedly sighing, "Just a little bad. My son is stubborn and likes one thing and would not look at other things. That is to the extent that he has not married until now. Really sinful." Chapter 698. Luo Shuayan jumped in shock and did not know why Su Furen suddenly said such scary words. She thought in her heart that it was just that they were not married and it was not like females were afraid of wasting their youth. Su Mingfeng's talent and appearance were placed there so it was natural to be picky. But seeing Su Furen's distressed look, she still comforted, "What is this? Furen need not worry too much about it. Look at our residence's Chioer who is still not married until now. One must pick a wife well. One will not be able to eat hot tofu if one is anxious. If one were to pick one for him in a hurry and discover that it is not suitable in the future, it would be harming oneself and others." Furen said it very correctly. Su Furen pulled Luo Shuayan's hands and said with a smile, "The younger generation have their own fortune. I originally thought so. But this child, Mingfeng, is a tight-lipped gourd and would not tell me anything. I do not know his thoughts at all." Luo Shuayan listened perfunctorily. She had seen Su Mingfeng before and he had a good eloquence. Su Furen really dared to say that he was a tight-lipped gourd when debating. She really did not want to continue talking about other people's family matters with Su Furen, so she changed the topic. Does Su Furen not want to know how these sparrows are raised? Su Furen glanced at the two sparrows in the cage but pretended not to hear and continued, "It is better to talk about my good-for-nothing son. Luo Shuiyan, when Ming Feng was young, he liked a painting that his father found, and afterwards other paintings did not enter his eyes. When others gave it to him, he would not even look at it, but when that painting was given away by his father, Ming Feng thought about it for many years." Su Furen sighed. Ming Feng is a sentimental person and the things that he fancied are the best, and because of this, he would not be willing to settle for anything else. Just as Luo Shuiyan was puzzled, she heard Su Furen's voice, "This young lady is the same. He likes a young lady and other young ladies would not enter his heart." Luo Shuiyan suddenly understood and smiled, "So eldest Su young master already has a sweetheart. One do not know which family's young lady has such good fortune." This was originally a polite remark, but one did not think that Su Furen was waiting for this sentence. She immediately clapped her hands and said, "It is the young lady of your residence." Luo Shuiyan's face instantly turned from green to white, then from white to green. Her feelings had come knocking on her door in a roundabout way, waiting for her. Luo Shuiyan was wondering why the other party brought 2 bird cages over but didn't even ask about the birds. Instead, he kept on praising his own son. Now, she suddenly understood. He was here to claim marriage. Su Furen saw that Luo Shuiyan's expression was not very happy and her heart was anxious. She knew that the Shen family had a big business and did not need to place the Su family's little property in their eyes. There were many families like the Su family who were willing to marry into the Shen family in the Ding capital. In addition to seeing Shen Miao with her own eyes today, she did not see any of the rumors of a weak and vulgar young lady. Such a dignified bearing, a girl who knew when to advance and when to retreat. If he were to marry her and make her the mistress of the household, she would be able to control the situation. Both the inside and the outside were very satisfied. It all depended on the attitude of the Shen family. Luo Shuiyan's face turned cold as she said, "Su Furen came today just for this." Su Furen was somewhat embarrassed as she knew that it was not right to look at one's daughter-in-law under other pretexts, but she still said, "Shen Furen must not be angry. I know that I was rude today, but you are also a mother and should be able to understand my thoughts." Luo Shuiyan's expression slightly relaxed. When Su Furen came today, her attitude was indeed not bad. One would not slap a smiling person, so she said, without any reason or rhyme, "Why would Su Furen come and talk to me about this?" Luo Shuiyan's heart thumped. Could it be that Shen Miao and Su Ming Feng had secretly arranged a marriage? Even though the folkways of Ming Qi were considered to be more open, it was not a glorious thing for both families to privately make an alliance without knowing about it. Chapter 699. Su Furen said, "I heard from Ming Lang that Ming Feng is secretly interested in 5th young lady." Initially one did not believe it because this son of mine is a blockhead. Until now he did not get close to any young lady. "I don't know what kind of person 5th Miss is, so I came here today." After seeing 5th young lady, one finally understood why Ming Feng liked her. Good looks, good temperament, and this bearing was not bad. I guess that in the entire Ming Qi, only the Shen family could raise such a young lady. Not to hide it from Shen Furen, not only Ming Feng, even I like it very much, so one could not wait to tell Furen about this matter. I know Madam is a straightforward person and likes to be straightforward, so I won't beat around the bush. These words were said with sincerity and praised Shen Miao without a trace. As a mother, how could she not like her daughter being praised? Luo Shuiyan's complexion gradually improved. But how could Shen Miao's marriage be decided with just one sentence? Firstly, the Shen family's position in Ming Qi was special, and it did not matter if the in-laws were strong or weak, thus it was really difficult to decide on Shen Miao's marriage. Secondly, even though Su Mingfeng had a good reputation outside, he was sick a few years back and delayed his official career. Luo Shuaiyan did not want Shen Miao to marry a sickly person. Moreover, Luo Shuaiyan and Su Mingfeng had not met before and did not know how this person's character was. Thirdly, and the most important point, was that Su Mingfeng liked Shen Miao, but one did not know if Shen Miao liked Su Mingfeng or not. Luo Shuaiyan was an open-minded mother. Even though it was the matchmaker's words, Luo Shuaiyan hoped that Shen Miao would be happy and that her future husband must be someone that she liked. Therefore, he couldn't make a hasty decision like this. My daughter's marriage cannot be decided in such a short time. Luo Shuaiyan smiled and said, on behalf of my master, I thank Foren and Gongzi for their love. It's just that the marriage ceremony requires a lot of consideration. I can't give Madam an answer in such a short period of time. I'm afraid I'll have to think about it for a few more days. Just as Madam had said, everyone was a mother. As a mother, I love my daughter dearly and hope that Foren can understand. Luo Shuaiyan did not dare to be too harsh with her words and left some leeway. This made Madame Su extremely satisfied. She said a few more words before leaving. After Madame Su left, Luo Shuaiyan's eyes darkened and she looked a little dignified. All along, Luo Shuaiyan and Shen Axian felt that Shen Miao was still young and there was no rush in marriage. But when Su Furen came to visit with the intention to claim kinship, it reminded Luo Shuaiyan that at this age, it was time for Shen Miao to be engaged. But how many young talents were there in the Ding capital? Luo Shuaiyan planned to wait for Shen Axian to return before telling him about this matter. At the same time, she would get someone to make a booklet so that she could look around. Madame Su returned to the Su residence. For the first time, Master Su didn't go fishing and play with the birds. Instead, he stayed in the house. Seeing that Madame Su had returned, she immediately went forward to massage Madame Su's shoulders and ordered a maid to serve tea. Old Master Su was like a mouse seeing a cat when he saw Madame Su, and the surrounding servants were already used to it. Master Su asked, "How was it? What did Shen Foren say?" "I didn't agree, but I didn't say I wouldn't agree either. I think I still need to think about it." Su Furen said, "After all, I went over so abruptly today. Moreover, the Shen family is not an ordinary family, so it is not a bad thing to think a little longer." "Still need to think." Su Yu's face fell. "What is there to think about?" Su Furen found it funny. "Could it be that you think that if I go over today, one would agree?" "Why not agree?" Su Yu asked, "What is not good about Mingfeng? Is there a second young talent like Mingfeng in the Ding capital? Whoever's young lady marries to Mingfeng, that is a blessing cultivated in the previous lifetime." As he spoke, he suddenly thought of something. "Wait, how about fifth Shen young lady?" Chapter 700. He finally remembered to ask about this matter. Master Su had seen Shen Miao at the palace banquet and felt that Shen Miao was not bad, just that her character was a little too strong. However, most men could not accurately judge a woman. This kind of thing had to be done by the woman. That was why Madame Su came out and looked at this future daughter-in-law with a critical gaze. Su Yu wanted to hear what Madame Su thought of Shen Miao. Su Furen drank a mouthful of tea and said, "Mingfeng's foresight is indeed not bad. I see that this fifth Shen young lady is much better than most of the young ladies in the Ding capital." There was no need to talk about her temperament, and since she was a young lady taught by Shen Axian, it was assumed that her character would not be bad. That kind of bearing was rare, like that of a noble from the palace. But there was one point. One fear that Mingfeng would not be able to tame this kind of young lady. But it is also good. Ming Feng's temperament is gentle, and with such a strong Furen as the matriarch of the household, this residence can be controlled. It is very good. It was rare for Su Yu to hear Su Furen praise a person like this, and his heart started to mutter. Wasn't it said that mothers-in-law were extremely picky with their daughters-in-law? Could it be that his wife was too gentle? Su Mingfeng returned from outside, and just as he was about to step into the main hall, the corner of his clothes was pulled by someone. When he looked back, it was Su Minglang. Su Minglang looked at him seriously. "Eldest brother, you must not go in and create trouble, lest you ruin your lifelong event." "My lifelong event?" Su Mingfeng was puzzled. "What lifelong event?" Today, I heard Jin Feng Jijie joking with other people, saying that mother went to look for a wife for you. Su Minglang said. Su Mingfeng was shocked when he heard it. "What look for a wife? Who is it?" Su Minglang said, "Isn't it Shen family's older sister? Mother went to the Shen family to look for a wife for me." Su Mingfeng raised his voice. Su Minglang jumped in shock and said hatefully that iron did not become steel. "Isn't it just marrying a wife? In the future, when older sister Shin becomes my eldest Saw, she would not be able to see your actions." He patted Su Mingfeng's arm. "Really envy you." The Su family came to the Shin mansion to find a wife for Su Mingfeng. On the surface, no one knew about this matter, but in fact there were many people who knew about it. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan discussed for a while and really started to seriously look for young talents in the Ding capital for Shen Miao, and even considered if they should let Shen Miao participate in a few flower banquets. Shen Xian also let Shen Qiu pay attention to the youths in the capital who were of the same age as him. The Shen mansion had already created such a big movement. If the residents of Prince Rui did not know about it, then it would not be justifiable. When Xie Jingxing returned to the residence of the Qin prince, he was faced with Ji Yushu's provocation of wanting the world to be in chaos. Song Yang didn't know where he got the news from, but he jumped up and down with a letter in his hand, saying, "Third brother, the Su family has come to propose marriage. What are you still waiting for?" He paused before continuing, "Still not going to find trouble with Su Mingfeng." Gao Yang's face also revealed a worried look. Su Furen knows how to conduct herself well in the Ding capital and is on good terms with many Furens. The Su family's reputation is also not bad, and if Shen Xian feels that Su Mingfeng is not bad, perhaps he would agree to this marriage. Xie Jingxing swept a glance at the letter and knew the contents of the letter like the back of his hand, and felt a headache. Su Mingfeng's way of doing things was more dependable, but he had a pair of parents who were too jumpy. Now that they had come to propose marriage, one could not predict what shocking things they would do. Moreover, Ji Yushu was still fanning the flames at the side and said with an indignant face, "What a good Su Mingfeng." Initially, when he was with third older brother, he called each other brothers and even had such a long friendship. Now that third older brother has changed his identity, he quietly went out to poach. His schemes are really deep. Ancestors said that a long journey tests the stamina of a horse and time reveals a person's heart. So this Su Mingfeng is this kind of person. Third older brother, you should break off all ties with him. Chapter 701. Gao Yang really could not listen to Ji Yushu's nonsense and said, "Now it is better to find another method." The Su family's matter was a small matter, but the Shen family had already started to search for a husband for fifth Shen young lady. "We do not have much time in Ming Qi, so if you want to do it, settle it earlier." When these words were said, Xie Jingxing's expression turned cold. Ji Yushu did not detect it but had an inspiration and said, "I have an idea." The few of them looked at him together and Ji Yushu said, "Since third older brother is a dead person in their eyes, why not pretend to be a ghost at night and appear in Su Mingfeng's dreams? Just say that Shin young lady is the person that third older brother fancied and wanted to have a ghost marriage. Su Mingfeng would be scared and naturally would not dare to have any ideas on fifth Shin young lady. I third older brother, don't go. Listen to me finish. Gao Yang shook his head and sighed. Stupid. Xie Jingxing returned to the study and sat down in front of the table. His brows were tightly knitted, and no one knew what he was thinking about. Tie, who was beside him, asked hesitantly, Master, today at Putua Temple, what Great Master Guanzhen said. Great Master Guanzhen was a wandering monk. Some said that he was from the Great Liang, some said that he was from the Qin country and some said that he was from the Ming Qi. But one thing was for sure. Whenever Master Guanzhen came to the temple, everyone would treat him as an honored guest. Great Master Guanzhen was a disciple of Buddha. It was said that he could see the past and future of a person. This was naturally an exaggeration, but Great Master Guanzhen's prophecy was extremely accurate. He once predicted a flood in the Great Liang. Emperor Yongle tried to persuade Master Guanzhen to stay, but Master Guanzhen refused. 2 years ago when Xie Jingxing returned to the Great Liang, Emperor Yongle wanted to find Master Guanzhen to take a look at Xie Jingxing's physiognomy, but at that time Master Guanzhen had already left the Great Liang and no one knew of his whereabouts. He didn't expect to meet him here. In the daytime when they arrived at Putua Temple, Xie Jingxing did not say anything, but Reverend Guanzhen had already guessed his identity. No one knew how he managed to guess it. And the prophecy for Xie Jingxing was, Army Destroyer Ziwei, Ferocious Dragon subdue the heavens. He was using his life to decide the overall situation. The meaning of this explanation was that Xie Jingxing was a very important person. He alone could affect the entire situation. The Army Destroyer Purple Finger first broke and then established, using both kindness and might. When Xie Jingxing was in Ming Qi, he claimed to be the heir apparent of the residence of the Marquis of Linan and died in the battlefield. Afterwards, when Prince Rui of the Great Liang reappeared in front of the world, it was established. The dragon was the leader of all living things. Unfortunately, it was a vicious dragon. Savage and ruthless. Xie Jingxing was asking about tribulation. However, Great Master Guanzhen shook his head. He only said that the fierce dragon doesn't get tribulated was actually helping people to pass the tribulation. When Xie Jingxing asked again, Master Guanzhen said that heaven's secrets must not be divulged and refused to say anything more. Tai Yi was a little discouraged. It was not easy for Great Master Guanzhen to read his fortune, but he gave a vague answer. Then, he thought about how his master had a temperament that was indifferent to external things. Fierce dragon doesn't get tribulated, helping others to overcome their tribulations. Listening to his master, he seemed to have become a bodhisattva. Who had such a big face to be able to let his master be his backer? Even if that person dared to do so, would master be willing? Xie Jingxing said, do not bother about this. First send this letter back to the Great Liang. His expression was somewhat stern. Shen Miao was unable to fall asleep on the bed. Song Yang's words in the afternoon were still lingering in her ears. She had never thought that Su Furen's purpose of coming to the Shen mansion was to seek marriage with Su Mingfeng. Thinking of Song Yang's wooden face as he repeated all the words of the two people in the room to her without missing a single word, especially when he was a man speaking in a woman's language and kept on saying, all our mothers, Shen Miao felt that it was somewhat funny. Xie Jingxing was indeed a talent. One did not know where did he find such a precious secret guard. Chapter 702. But as she thought about it, she could not smile anymore. Why would Su Furen want to claim marriage for Su Mingfeng? From Song Yang's words, Su Mingfeng had deep feelings for Shen Miao and Shen Miao would never believe in these words. Not to mention that Su Mingfeng had only seen her a few times, moreover that day on the streets, Su Mingfeng's gaze when he looked at her was not special at all. Could it be that this was Su Mingfeng's conspiracy? Shen Miao thought that because Su Mingfeng wanted to understand the secret of the tiger head bracelet, he decided to marry her. Was he not afraid that he would not be able to find out the truth by spending the whole day with her? Or did he think that after she became his wife, she would tell him everything? But Su Mingfeng's actions were too much of a loss. In order to find out the truth, he even threw in his entire life. Those people in the Supreme Court of Justice should be so ashamed that they would not have the face to face their fellow villagers. Guyu walked in from the outside with a stack of clothes in her hands and said with a smile, "Young lady, tomorrow one is going to Putua Monastery and Furen said to wear some light colors." This servant brought some darker colored clothes for young lady to pick and wear tomorrow morning. As she spoke, she cut the wick of the oil lamp for Shen Miao and said, "Young lady must rest early today and wake up early tomorrow. One fear that there is a long way to go." Shen Miao felt helpless when this matter was mentioned. In the evening, Luo Shuiyan's maid came over to tell Luo Tan and Shen Miao that she would bring the three of them to Putua Monastery to offer incense. Luo Tan had never been to Putua Monastery before and was naturally very happy, but Shen Miao was somewhat lacking in interest. Putua Monastery was considered a famous monastery in the Ding capital and was located halfway up the mountain in the northern part of the city. It was said that the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas there were very spiritual, and the most spiritual was the tree of cultivating destinies. The young female used copper coins to exchange for some red ropes from the monks in the temple and tied the red ropes to a pouch and threw it up the tree. If the red ropes in the pouch were not thrown down, it meant that the Yu Lao had heard the female's prayers and would bring a good marriage for the female. Shen Miao had also gone to that tree of cultivating destinies in her past life, and in order to be able to tie the knot with Fu Xiu Yi, she bought 100 red ropes in one go and threw it up. Afterwards this matter was accidentally spread by Shen Qing and Shen Yu and it became a joke in the Ding capital. Therefore, Shen Miao did not like the tree of karma that much. If she did not hear Su Furen and Luo Shuiyan's conversation from Tsongyang today, Shen Miao would not have thought of anything and would only feel that it was nearing the end of the year and Luo Shuiyan really wanted to go and offer incense. But after knowing what they said in the main hall, Shen Miao understood that Luo Shuiyan did not want to offer incense but obviously wanted her to throw the red rope on the tree of cultivating destinies. Shen Miao's heart was extremely unwilling and even thought of pretending to be sick. But this would be too deliberate, and Luo Tan was in high spirits and Shen Miao was easily soft-hearted towards Luo Shuiyan. Thinking that it was just to throw the red rope, she could only agree. However, he still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. This night Shen Miao did not sleep well. She had several dreams during the night, and in her dreams, she was standing under the tree of cultivating destinies and throwing the red rope up. Luo Shuiyan bought an entire bucket of red rope for her, and Shen Miao's arms were sore from throwing it, but all the red ropes with her markings were all gone. There was nothing on the ground or on the tree. Just as she was feeling astonished, she saw a purple-clad youth sitting on the tree with a bunch of her red ropes in his arms. His lips hooked up to her with a smile that was not a smile and asked, "Who are you going to marry?" Sword-like eyebrows, a straight nose, thin red lips and a pair of peach blossom eyes that were as sharp as a blade. It was Xie Jingxing's face. Shen Miao suddenly woke up from her dream and could not fall asleep no matter what. She managed to endure till dawn, and when Jingxi came in, she was shocked and asked, "Why did young lady not sleep well last night? Her eyes are all black." Chapter 703. Shen Miao waved her hands. She only felt that this dream was strange and had some unknown shame and indignation, so she simply did not say anything. After eating and washing up, one went out of the door and saw Luo Shuiyan and the rest waiting in the hall. What made Shen Miao surprised was that other than Luo Tan, Shen Qiu and Luo Ling were also there. Luo Shuiyan said, since it's an incense offering, the younger generation should all go together to pray for the blessings of Buddha. Shen Axayan said, then I will also go along. Why are you going? Luo Shuiyan hated that he didn't understand her meaning and said, you don't have to go. Shen Qiu was puzzled why his father could not go, but Shen Miao understood in her heart. It seemed that Luo Shuiyan not only wanted her and Luo Tan to throw the red ropes, most likely she also wanted Shen Qiu and Luo Ling to throw it. After all, Shen Qiu and Luo Ling had reached the age to marry. But wasn't the tree of cultivating destiny something that only women could throw? If it was really hung up, could it be that Shen Qiu and Luo Ling would become cut sleeves in the future? Shen Miao could not help but shiver. Without wasting too much time, everyone quickly set off. The distance between Pu Tuo Monastery and the Shen Mansion was somewhat far. If they set off in the morning, it would be close to noon when they arrived. Along the way, Luo Tan was in high spirits and kept asking Luo Shuiyan if Pu Tuo Temple was really so magical. As Luo Shuiyan spoke, she indeed led the topic to the Tree of Karma. When Luo Tan heard the news about the Tree of Cultivating Destinies, she found it very interesting and said, this is somewhat similar to a custom of our Shaochun city, but since Pu Tuo Monastery is a famous monastery, then this Tree of Cultivating Destinies should be very efficacious. She shook Shen Miao's arm. Biao, youngest sister, how about we also go and throw the red rope? Aren't you not in a rush to marry? Shen Miao looked at her from the corner of her eyes. Luo Tan lightly coughed twice. Even so, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Luo Shuiyan also said, Jiao Jiao, Tan, when we arrive at Pu Tuo Temple, the two of you should also throw the red rope. Whether you are going to marry or not, you will be able to gain some good luck, won't you? Luo Tan excitedly complied. Luo Tan had long known of her mother's plans and had no choice but to comply. But it was said that they were on their way to the ancient temple that had existed for hundreds of years in Mingqi. In one of the meditation rooms, the incense was curling up, and at the moment there was a 70-year-old monk sitting there. This monk had a kind and benevolent countenance. He really looked like a disciple of the Buddha. He wore a red kasaya and held a string of Buddhist beads in his hand. The young monk beside him asked, Master, we've been waiting here for several days. Will the fated one really come? This poor monk has been waiting here for many days for her arrival, the old monk said lightly. But I've waited for a long time. The little monk was only in his teens and was at the age where he was curious. He quickly asked, when will he come? The old monk did not speak and only silently turned the Buddhist beads in his hand. Suddenly, he stopped turning the Buddhist beads and repeatedly stroked a round Buddhist bead between his fingers. After a while, the old monk smiled. In a moment, he said. When Shen Miao and entourage reached Pu Tuo Monastery, it was not even noon. Perhaps it was because the horses ran hard today, or the coachman drove the carriage well, or the road was much smoother. In short, the journey that would normally take 5.5 hours was completed in less than 4 hours today. The few of them jumped off the carriage, and Shen Qiu and Luo Ling also flipped off their horses. They saw that in the middle of the mountain in the lush forest, there was an ancient temple. Because of the layers of clouds, it was like a fairyland. In addition to the distant Buddhist sounds, one could not help but feel a sense of awe. Luo Tan sighed, really has the style of a famous temple. Luo Shuiyan instructed, Qiu, Linger, both of you dismount first. I will bring Tanner and Jiao Jiao in. After Shen Qiu and Luo Ling left, the guards of the Shen residence followed Shen Miao and entourage. Luo Tan saw a tree that was hung with red ropes from afar and said, This is the tree of cultivating destinies. Youngest Gu, quickly come and see. It is so big. Luo Shuiyan smiled, let us first go and buy the red ropes. Shen Miao followed behind both of them and felt helpless in her heart. Luo Tan ran very fast and Luo Shuiyan had a fiery temperament, thus Shen Miao was left behind. But with the guards of the Shen residence and Song Yang in the dark, Shen Miao was not worried at all. When she followed Luo Shuiyan and the rest into a Buddhist hall, Shen Miao's skirt was suddenly pulled by someone. She turned back to look and saw a person in Taoist robes squatting at the side of the threshold. How would there be people from the Taoist sects in a Buddhist place? This Taoist priest's clothes were tattered and there was a lot pot in front of him and a horsetail whisk in his hand. One did not know why, but it was somewhat comical. He was around 40 years of age and had a small mustache as he looked at Shen Miao with bright eyes. Young lady, this poor Taoist sees that your glabella is dark and one fear that there will be a bloody calamity. There are green circles under your eyes and there will be trouble with peach blossoms. Do you want this poor Taoist to read your fortune? Where did this lunatic come from? Full of nonsense. Jing Zhe was extremely angry. Shen Miao pulled out the corner of her skirt and was about to walk forward without looking sideways. But she heard that person saying, even though a phoenix's life is good, it is a pity to be imprisoned for a lifetime. Chapter 704. Even though a phoenix's life is good, it is a pity to be imprisoned for a lifetime. Shen Miao's footsteps suddenly paused as she frowned at that Taoist priest and asked, "What did you say?" That Taoist priest however turned his head away proudly and started to sing a little tune. Jing Zhe said, "Young lady must not take it to heart. Who knows where this swindler came from to speak nonsense?" Even though one did not know why would people from the sect come to a Buddhist place, but this Taoist priest did not look proper, not to mention the sage-like demeanor of an ordinary Taoist. It seemed that he was just casually saying it and was no different from those swindlers on the streets. Shen Miao looked to the front and Luo Shuiyan and Luo Tan had already entered and behind her, there were a few guards following behind and did not move forward. She pondered for a moment before sitting down on the small wooden stool in front of the Taoist priest's stall and said, "I want to have my fortune read. This poor Taoist's fortune is very precious." Before the words were finished, Shen Miao took out a golden peanut from her bag. This was the thing that Su Furen gave her in the pouch. Most likely she was afraid that it would be rude to gift it too expensive, so it was a pouch full of golden peanuts so that it would be convenient to buy things. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu were somewhat anxious when they saw this. The most expensive fortune told on the streets was only a few taels of silver, so why was there a need to use golden peanuts? But once Shen Miao had decided on something, there was no room to change it. Even though the two maids were anxious, they were helpless. Shen Miao said, "If your fortune is accurate, then this golden peanut will belong to you. If it is not accurate, I will let people flip your stall and let the yamen come and arrest you for swindling." That Taoist priest smiled as he received the golden peanut and took out a pot of lots from his back. He shook it before handing it over to Shen Miao and smiled, "Young lady, draw 2 lots. Why do I need to smoke 2? Gu Yu could not help but ask, "Usually 1 is enough. Could it be?" She was suddenly enlightened, 1 for safety and the other for marriage. Luo Shuiyan began to worry about Shen Miao's lifelong affairs, thus she also reminded the head maid beside Shen Miao. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu knew that the most important thing for Shen Miao to come to an ordinary temple was to throw the red string on the marriage tree. Now that the Taoist priest wanted Shen Miao to draw 2 lots, they naturally thought of this. The Taoist priest shook his head and said, "Fortune-telling. Why does one need 2 lots for fortune-telling?" Jing Zhe did not understand. That Taoist looked at Shen Miao and stroked his beard as he smiled mysteriously, "Young lady's destiny cannot be calculated with 1 stick." Shen Miao's heart skipped a beat. Looking at the Taoist priest's confident look, she silently took the pot of lots and shook it. 2 lots fell to the ground with a clatter. That Taoist picked up the stick and looked at it. Jingzhe and Guyu were somewhat nervous. The Taoist priest shook his head and said, "Trapped in the phoenix cage, life is in danger, causing trouble. In front of the guillotine platform, it's all empty." He said, "This is a great misfortune." When these words were said, Jingzhe's and Guyu's expressions changed. What was called great omen and what was called guillotine? Jingzhe said, "What a good fake Taoist. Full of nonsense, who are you trying to deceive? I think you're a liar. I'm going to report this to the authorities." Hey, the Taoist priest said, "What's the hurry? Why can't the little girl keep her cool? Isn't there another stick here?" Shen Miao's heart was pounding. Trapped in the phoenix cage was when she was trapped in the cold palace of the 9 palaces and her struggles were fruitless. To cause trouble and implicate others, the entire Shen family was annihilated. Wasn't this the guillotine platform? She worked hard and put in effort for Fu Xiu-yi to sit firmly on the emperor's throne, but at the end it was all in vain. Fu Xiu-yi only gave her 3 feet of white silk. Even Wan Yu and Fu Ming did not survive and he did not leave anything behind. How was it not all in vain? Chapter 705. Shen Miao said, "Taoist priest, help me look at the other lot." Jingzhe and Guyu were somewhat anxious as they could not understand why Shen Miao would look at this Taoist priest in a different light and was even willing to let this Taoist priest look at the other lot. That Taoist priest chuckled and picked up the other lot. He glanced at Shen Miao and stroked his beard as usual before slowly saying, "Extreme negative brings bliss, purple air coming from the east, an auspicious omen. A very good lot." Jingzhe and Guyu were afraid that the Taoist priest would say something inauspicious. It was nearing the end of the year and everyone was afraid that inauspicious words would bring bad luck. Seeing him say that, they were relieved. Jingzhe did not let up and ridiculed, "I said that you are a liar. One lot is ominous and the other is auspicious. So which lot is true?" "Both lots are true." The Taoist priest said, "If you do not believe, ask your family's young lady if this Taoist priest is lying." Shen Miao's heart moved and said, "Jingzhe, Guyu, both of you go to the guards first. I have some words that I want to speak to this Taoist priest alone." Jingzhe wanted to persuade a few words as she felt that this Taoist priest was a swindler. However, Guyu shook her head at her and pulled her to one side to make space for Shen Miao and the Taoist priest to speak in peace. Shen Miao frowned as she looked at the Taoist priest. Does this Taoist priest know something? The Taoist priest was tidying up the lot pot as he spoke without turning his head. "I saw a young lady's physiognomy and it is an extremely noble person. Looking at young lady's fate, it is a phoenix's fate. It should be a life of glory and splendor, with fine food and silk clothes. Unfortunately, one's fate was changed." Shen Miao said, "What changed one's fate?" Her voice was somewhat urgent. The Taoist priest stopped his actions and looked at her. "Young lady's fate is very strange. There will be a big calamity in one's life and after passing through this calamity, one would naturally have a smooth life. But the first lot that young lady drew did not pass through this calamity." "What is my calamity?" Shen Miao asked. "A true phoenix and a fake phoenix. The fake phoenix snatched the true phoenix's fate and fortune and the true phoenix was imprisoned." Shen Miao only felt that her heart was about to jump out of her throat. Real phoenix, fake phoenix, could it be that she was the real phoenix and as for the fake phoenix, could it be Mei Furen? Mei Furen gave birth to Fu Xing and Fu Xiu-yi loved Fu Xing so much. In the past lifetime, Fu Ming died and she also died, so Fu Xiu-yi would make Mei Furen the Empress and with Fu Xiu-yi's love for Fu Xing, perhaps he would pass the throne to Fu Xing. Wasn't this the same as having one's fate stolen? Shen Miao said, priest said the first lot, then in the second lot, can my calamity be passed? With your abilities, it's impossible. The Taoist priest shook his head and said, but you're lucky to have a benefactor in your life. Benefactor? Shen Miao asked, who is my benefactor? This noble person has fate with you. He is the life of a vicious dragon. A vicious dragon subduing the heavens, a phoenix trapped in a cage. He can save you, and you can also dispel his evil energy. If you meet this person and borrow his power, Miss Fate will return to its rightful place. What you have lost, you will definitely gain. Shen Miao asked, where is this noble person? How can I find him? The Taoist priest smiled, far at the horizon but close at hand. This meant that he did not want to say more. Shen Miao's eyes flashed and asked again, there is another question. Ordinary people can only draw one lot, but why do I have two lots? Is this the will of heaven? She had been reborn, and every time she thought about it, there was a feeling of unreality. She feared that one day when she woke up, she would still be in that quiet cold palace and all of this was just a dream. Since this strange priest who came from nowhere was somewhat accurate, perhaps he knew a little. Heaven and earth are heartless and treat all living things as dogs. Young lady's two lots were requested by someone for young lady. Chapter 706. There is someone. Shen Miao caught the crux of the Taoist's words, who is that person? It is someone who owes you a lot. The Taoist stood up from the ground and patted the dust off his clothes. The mysteries of heaven must not be revealed. Today this poor Taoist and young lady have already revealed too much, and any more would cause one's good fortune to be cut. Young lady should not ask any more, and remember, the past is like a dream, one must not be entangled. When one is at the peak of prosperity, purple air comes from the east. Finishing, he waved his horsetail whisk and walked away in big strides. Shen Miao stood at the same spot in a daze until Jingzhi and Guyu walked to her side. Jingzhi said, strange atmosphere. One do not know where it came from. Is there no one in Putuo Monastery to manage it? Shen Miao felt that she had seen some secrets and there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. Just as she was thinking, Luo Shuayan and Luo Tan walked out from inside. Luo Tan was holding a small basket in her hands and on top of it was a big pouch connected to a red string. She said with a smile, Biao youngest sister, let's go and hang the red string. Why are you lagging behind? Luo Shuayan also said, just now I heard that there was a reverend preaching in the meditation room, so I wanted to call you over to listen. But when I turned around, I saw you behind me. I don't know what you were doing that took you so long. Do you still want to listen? Shen Miao just listened to the Taoist's conversation and her mind was strangely confused. How would she still have the mood to listen to the monk preaching? She shook her head, not going. Then let us go hang the red string first. Luo Tan was very excited and pulled Shen Miao forward. In the meditation room that Luo Shuayan passed by, the old monk's action of knocking the wooden fish paused. The little monk asked, Master, it is already past noon. Did Master not say that he would come? Is he coming or not? Master Guanjin stood up from the meditation mat and shook his head, not coming. Not coming. The little monk was surprised, why? She met someone else. The little monk was puzzled, why not come after meeting someone else? Did Master not specially wait for her here? If she did not come, then all these days of waiting would be wasted. No matter. Master Guanjin put his palms together, she also met a fated person. This is cause and effect. Shen Miao and Luo Tan went outside and arrived under the tree of cultivating destinies. The tree of cultivating destinies was originally a huge sweet-scented osmanthus tree. It was extremely thick and sturdy, but now, its branches could not be seen clearly. They were all covered by the purses hanging from the red strings on the tree. Luo Ling and Shinqiu did not come at the end since this was for females to use. Luo Tan scooped up a red string and passed it to Shin Miao. Biao, youngest sister, write your name on the pouch and throw it up the tree. If it is hung up, it means that the Yu Lao has heard your prayers and will arrange a good marriage for you. Luo looked at Luo as he said, Biao ao Biao. Is Biao Shin. Luo said Shin of Shin. Is Biao. Luo Tian of Shin. Yang of JS of but Ji Jiu. Luo Shuayan also said, Jiao, write some and throw them up. Don't be afraid. Shin Miao was somewhat picky as she looked at the basket of red ropes. Since she could not win against Luo Tan and Luo Shuayan, she could only pick one and write her name on the pouch. When Luo Tan saw this, she said, Biao, youngest sister, you took too little. This one cannot be thrown up. Take a few more and these will be enough. Luo Shuayan also said, Jiao, one is not enough. Shin Miao felt that she did not want to throw any of them. Moreover, she was still thinking about the Daoist priest's words. How could she have the mood to do this? Thus, she just casually threw them away. Chapter 707. One will definitely not be able to hang. It is better for you to. Why did it hang? Luo Tan cried out in surprise. Luo Shuayan was also very surprised. Generally speaking, the more red ropes one threw up, the higher the possibility of it hanging on the branch. If one could not hold it, one would not be able to throw it up. Who knew that Shin Miao casually threw it up and it actually hung up? Not only that, it was a high branch and it was hung so firmly that one feared that it would not fall even if the wind and rain hit. Biao, youngest sister, you are too lucky. Luo Tan grabbed Shin Miao's arm and said excitedly, Look. That branch is so high that it means that the person that Biao, youngest sister, is going to marry must be a dragon or phoenix among men. The branch is also so stable that it means that this marriage is in the bag and is very good. Who would not like to hear the words of good fortune? Luo Shuayan's face also bloomed into a smile. Jiao's throw is not bad. I also said that if you could not hang it up, I would think of ways to help you hang it up. But there are still many branches around this branch. Luo Tan touched her chin and explained in a serious manner, the direction of these branches are all extending towards Biao, youngest sister's pouch. What does this mean? This means that Biao, youngest sister, has more than one marriage. Youngest Gu, this is a good thing. One family has a daughter and 100 families will seek for it. Future brother-in-law will have to face hardships in the future. Luo Tan said as she laughed. Shin Miao said, nonsense. But in her heart she thought of that priest's strange words, green under the eyes, the difficulty of peach blossoms. She could not help but feel uneasy in her heart. Could it be that it was really said correctly? She secretly despised herself in her heart. Now that she did not even see a single peach blossom leaf, where was the difficulty of peach blossoms? It was just that Luo Tan was talking nonsense and she had treated it as the truth. This day passed exceptionally quickly and Luo Tan later hung a lot of her own red ropes up, prayed to Buddha, offered some incense, donated some incense and ate the vegetarian dishes in the temple before returning. When they returned to the Shin mansion, it was already evening and everyone was tired after a day, so they all went to rest early. Shin Miao, however, repeatedly thought about the words that priest said in the day. There was a calamity in her life, and a benefactor came to her rescue. Who was that benefactor? Who was the one who asked for 2 divination sticks for her? Or rather, who was the one who asked for a chance to be reborn? Her loved ones from her previous life had almost disappeared before she died. Shen Miao thought that even after she died, there would not be anyone to collect her corpse. Who would be so omnipotent? With such abilities and such a friendship, why did he ask for her to be reborn in this life? He never would have thought that there would be such a person. Shen Miao suddenly remembered something and said, "Song Yang." A black-clothed man suddenly appeared in the room. Shen Miao facepalmed and only felt that Xie Jingxing's secret guards were so elusive that even her mistress would be shocked. She said, "You are not allowed to tell Xie Jingxing about today's matter and what the priest said to me." She added another sentence, "If you tell Xie Jingxing, I will say that you have molested him." Song Yang, remember that, Shen Miao threatened. Every day in the Ding capital there were numerous people who were worried about all sorts of trivial matters. Young females were worried about getting married, young people were worried about obtaining scholarly honors, the elderly were weak and the young were childish. All of them were bustling about for benefits. Some people schemed for small benefits, some gambled for great wealth, and there were even some who bet their entire family's life but looked at the whole world. In the imperial family of Mingqi, as Emperor Wen Hui's health deteriorated day by day, the princes became more and more restless. Prince Shou's faction was arrogant and Prince Li's faction's actions were not small. Originally one thought that number 9 was content with his lot, but in the end with the Shin family and the Qin country's matter, no matter how one calculated, the crown prince was the weakest. Chapter 708. Emperor Wen Hui sighed and his brows were shrouded with a layer of declining air. Most likely he had been ill for a long time as his complexion was not good. Usually when he got angry in the throne room, it was just a forced appearance as there were quite a number of people eyeing this position covetously. If he were to fall, the court would be in chaos and one feared that there would be a loophole for those who had intentions to take advantage of it. When one was young, the princes were still young and did not feel anything, but when one grew older, one would be shocked to find out that one was not raising sons but a pack of wolves. Now that the young wolves had grown up, some things became uncontrollable. "How is the crown prince's health recently?" Emperor Wen Hui asked Su Gonggong, who was beside him. Su Gonggong quickly replied, "Yesterday the Empress saw the Crown Prince's consort and the Crown Prince's consort said that the Crown Prince's condition had improved and the imperial physician also said that he would be better after a period of recuperation." Emperor Wen Hui shook his head, "The Crown Prince's health is a problem." As the most legitimate successor to the throne, the Crown Prince was ill and weak. Even though there was a group of supporters and in the early years he was able to control the situation, but as Prince Shou's and Prince Li's factions gradually grew stronger, the Crown Prince's power was suppressed. Especially with the addition of Prince Ding recently, Emperor Wen Hui only felt a headache. Fortunately, even though the Crown Prince was ill and weak, he had given birth to the imperial grandson early so that even if Emperor Wen Hui passed away and the Crown Prince was ill, as long as the imperial grandson was slightly older, then the imperial grandson would be able to succeed the throne. Imperial physician Su's eyes and nose looked down, as if he did not sense Emperor Wen Hui's intention. But his heart was very clear that Emperor Wen Hui was most optimistic about the Crown Prince. There was no other reason. One was that the Crown Prince's succession was justified and the second was that the Crown Prince's health was not good, so relatively, he was the least threat to Emperor Wen Hui. Unlike the other sons, Prince Shou's faction was so arrogant that they had no one in their eyes. Prince Li's faction looked kind but had private dealings with many officials. Even Prince Ding, who was the most uninterested in power, had become a dog that would bite but not bark in Emperor Wen Hui's eyes. All of them were like wolves and tigers that Emperor Wen Hui had to guard against. A gust of cold wind blew in from outside the window, causing the Xian paper on the table to roll up. Seeing this, Imperial Physician Su quickly got up to close the window and said, "It's late at night. Your Majesty should sleep early." At the same time, the crown prince that Emperor Wenhui was talking about was talking to someone. If anyone saw it, they would be shocked. The person who was talking to the crown prince was not anyone else but Prince Ding, Fu Xiu-yi. Of these two people, one was the legitimate crown prince in Emperor Wenhui's eyes and the other was the dog that bites but does not bark in the prince's hearts. At this moment they were sitting at two sides of the table and Xiaohua snuggled up to the green plum wine on the table and was actually talking while boiling the wine. The crown prince said, "Don't take this matter to heart, ninth brother. Imperial father only misunderstood you because he believed the slanderous words of a lowly person. As time passes in the future, the misunderstanding will be resolved and he will naturally treat you the same as before. Ninth brother, why must you give up on yourself?" Fu Xiuyi shook his head. "Eldest brother, do not know the bitterness in my heart. An unexpected calamity has come and it is unavoidable. I am an idle person and have no interest in power or wealth. I just want to live a free life. In the past days, other than the matters in my hands, when have I ever interfered in other matters? But when the Shin family's matter happened, Imperial father still suspected me. This father-son relationship is just too cold. Ninth younger brother, speak cautiously." The crown prince jumped in shock and quickly stopped Fu Xiuyi's unfinished words. "There is no lack of parents in the world. You are Imperial father's son, so Imperial father will not do anything to you. If one wants to blame, blame those lowly people." The matter that they were talking about was the matter of the Shin family being searched and confiscated. Even though Emperor Wenhui hid it strictly, the various princes had informants in the palace. Moreover, with Shenwan opening his mouth, the princes were very clear about the real reason of the Shin family's case. It was because of this that the princes looked at Fu Xiuyi differently. Originally, when the various princes fought for the heir apparent, they were fighting to the death and thought that the ninth prince had no great ambitions and was only happy being an idle Wang Ye. Thus they did not deliberately target Fu Xiuyi. Who knew that when the matter came out, it was discovered that the other party had a chess piece buried in the dark. The most taboo thing in a fight was that the enemy was in the dark while one was in the light. Especially when it was a fight for the world, it was a big matter that one's life and family's lives would be lost if one was not careful. Prince Ding had been watching the fight in the dark for a long time. Perhaps he wanted to be the fisherman who benefits when the sandpiper and clam fight. Chapter 709. Previously everyone treated Prince Ding politely, but now when everyone looked at Fu Xiuyi, it was a common enemy. Fu Xiuyi had made too many enemies for himself in a short time. And after Fu Xiuyi became the brother's target, the first person he looked for was the crown prince. No matter if it was sincere or not, the crown prince was a soft-hearted master in front of everyone and was very kind but also easily deceived by others. Just like at this moment, he did not ridicule or attack but turned his head to comfort Fu Xiuyi. Fu Xiuyi smiled and said, "Never mind. Let's not talk about my matter and talk about eldest brother's matter." "Me?" The crown prince was somewhat strange. "What matter do I have? Now everyone is fighting till their heads are broken and bleeding. Eldest brother is obviously the most legitimate successor but was suppressed by others. This is not a good sign." Fu Xiuyi smiled. "Initially I did not want to participate in these matters and deliberately avoided it but did not think that others would come knocking on my door. Since it is so, it is better to take the initiative to come in. I intend to support eldest brother." The crown prince was surprised for a moment as he did not expect Fu Xiuyi to say that. He first smiled bitterly before shaking his head. "Ninth younger brother has good intentions and I will not thank you. It is just that. Ninth younger brother also know my body. If I am strong and healthy, naturally I can fight for it, but with my body, it is a problem how long I can be popular. All these. It is better to leave it to fate. At the end of the words, there was a faint sense of despair. Eldest brother must not belittle yourself. Eldest brother is born of the Empress and is the eldest son of His Majesty and is also the Crown Prince. Logically speaking, you are the future master of Ming Qi. If you were to let it go, one fear that others would laugh at Ming Qi for not having people to carry on. But I really do not have any ability. The Crown Prince was somewhat disheartened. The officials see my body and are not willing to follow me. There are not many followers left in the past. Ninth younger brother let me fight, but other than the title of Crown Prince, what other ability do I have to fight? When Fu Xiu heard it, he poured a cup of wine for himself and the Crown Prince and took a sip before saying, "So at this time, eldest brother needs a strong assistant." The Crown Prince shook his head. A good bird chooses a tree to nest in. Why would those capable people choose me? Actually, eldest brother need not think so difficult. Fu Xiu said, "It is indeed difficult to find many powerful people." But to put it simply, as long as he could find a powerful helper, there was no need for other followers. In other words, as long as we find this person, the rest of the officials will also follow Big Brother. Ninth brother, you're right. The Crown Prince said doubtfully. Formidable great General Shen Xin. Fu Xiu answered. The Crown Prince paused. Shen Xin holds the military power in his hands, and at the front is the Shen family's army charging and at the back is the Luo family's army. After leaving the capital for 2 years, his prestige among the commoners did not decrease, and even the Qin country and the Great Liang have to be somewhat courteous. With General Shen's help, everyone would naturally have a higher opinion of the Crown Prince's strength. People always seek to go up, water flows down, so followers will naturally come after hearing the news. When the Crown Prince heard Fu Xiu's words, he smiled. Ninth younger brother said correctly. But ninth younger brother must know that now General Shen's reputation is illustrious and everyone's favorite. The rest of the brothers also think so, but why did the Shen family army choose me? Because you are the Crown Prince. Fu Xiu said calmly, if the rest of the brothers choose General Shen, one fear that they will violate Imperial Father's taboo, but eldest brother is different. You are the rightful successor to the Emperor's throne and also the son that Imperial Father values the most. If General Shen falls into your hands, it would be something that Imperial Father would be happy to see. To others it would be a disaster, but to you it would be a blessing. Such a big military power cannot fall into the hands of an outsider. The Crown Prince no longer laughed because Fu Xiu's words were very reasonable. Emperor Wenhui was suspicious, for example Prince Zhou or Prince Li, or even Prince Ding. Fu Xiu, if he obtained Shen Xion's support, it would be a disaster for them as Emperor Wenhui would look at them with unfriendly eyes. But the Crown Prince was different. Emperor Wenhui despised the Crown Prince's power for being too weak and unable to balance the other princes, not to mention that the Crown Prince was the future Crown Prince in Emperor Wenhui's heart, so naturally he hoped to have a strong arm. But why would General Shen choose me? The Crown Prince still shook his head, as if he did not agree with Fu Xiu's words. He said, participating in these matters is risky. General Shen does not need to wade into these muddy waters and he can live freely. Fu Xiu smiled and said, General Shen does not need to choose eldest brother, but young lady Shen can. The Crown Prince was surprised. Fu Xiu lightly said, the fifth young lady of the Shen family, the pearl of General Shen's palm, should be at the age of engagement. Chapter 710. 167-inch Shen family's young lady. The Crown Prince was first surprised for a moment before crying out involuntarily, Shen Miao. Fu Xiaoyi looked at him but smiled and did not speak. No. The crown prince shook his head. The young lady of the Shen family is the pearl in General Shen's palm, and until now there is no engagement. One feared that he regards his daughter's lifelong event as very important, so how would he be willing to marry into the Eastern Palace? Moreover, the crown prince looked mischievously at Fu Xiaoyi and said with a smile, "Everyone in the Ding capital knows that the one that the young lady of the Shen family admired was you, ninth younger brother. I cannot snatch away her affection." Fu Xiaoyi smiled and shook his head. How would she admire me? It was only a joke when she was young. Otherwise, all these years you see, how would she treat me with any feelings, and was even colder than an outsider? When the crown prince thought about it carefully, it was indeed so. In these 2 years, it seemed that when Shen Miao saw Fu Xiaoyi, she did not seem to be as passionate as she was in the beginning. She was so cold that the two of them were very puzzled. Even though he said so, the crown prince still said, "Perhaps it is because you treat others unaffectedly that young lady Shen is angry with you. Big brother, please don't tease me." Fu Xiaoyi smiled. "Moreover, the Shen family is not a family that I can climb up to. I am willing to find a wife that does not have an illustrious identity, as it would be more comfortable." Speaking of which, Fu Xiaoyi said seriously, "Why must eldest brother take action from General Shen and young lady Shen? It's best to leave this matter to Imperial Father." "Father." "Not bad." Fu Xiaoyi saw that the wine cup in front of the crown prince was empty and filled the crown prince's wine cup before saying unhurriedly, "Imperial Father dotes on eldest brother the most. Since Imperial Father has the heart to support eldest brother, one would definitely find a helper for eldest brother. If eldest brother wants to marry Shen young lady, Imperial Father would definitely be happy to see it happen. In this way, all we need is an imperial edict to bestow marriage, and everything will be resolved. Ninth brother, your thinking is too simple." The crown prince shook his head. "A melon that is forcefully picked will not be sweet. One must know that if the young lady of the Shen family is not willing to marry me, even if she had to enter the Eastern Palace because of the imperial edict, there would be resentment in the future. General Shen would have resentment towards Imperial Father, and the marriage would not be successful and instead become enemies. That would be bad." "Big brother, why do you think so?" Fu Xiaoyi looked at him in surprise. "All the females in the world only seek for a rich and stable future. Marrying into the Eastern Palace, although she could not be the first consort, the status of the crown prince's secondary consort was not low. In the future, when eldest brother ascends the throne, the young lady of the Shen family will naturally be promoted to a consort. Eldest brother, you have a warm temperament, and as long as you treat the young lady of the Shen family well, in the future you will see a person's heart. How would she feel resentment towards eldest brother? Just like eldest sister-in-law, when she married big brother, it was Imperial Father who bestowed this marriage upon her. But now, she still wholeheartedly plans for big brother." When the crown prince heard it, he felt that Fu Xiaoyi's words were somewhat reasonable. The crown princess had been betrothed by an imperial edict from the emperor. Before this, they had only met a few times. At first, she was unwilling, but now, she was deeply in love with the crown prince and always thought for him. Women are all like this. If you marry a chicken, follow the chicken. If you marry a dog, follow the dog. As long as you treat her well, she will follow her husband with all her heart. Big brother is a dragon among men, how could he not be able to subdue a woman? The crown prince was somewhat embarrassed by Fu Xiaoyi's words and waved his hands repeatedly. The two brothers had a heart-to-heart talk and exchanged cups, and were extremely happy and harmonious. It was just that when it was deep into the night, after Fu Xiaoyi left the Eastern Palace, the drunkenness on the crown prince's face was swept away and was replaced with some sobriety. The advisor walked out from the back and looked at the crown prince probingly. "Your Highness, just now Ninth Highness words. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library, YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.